I'm a little bit worried that all tonight's vPub is going to achieve is, instead of bringing inspiration and insight and sage advice, all we're going to actually be able to do is just kind of add to that already palpable hunger that we all have to travel again once more. But still, we have to be able to plan ahead, and that's what we're going to try and get done tonight. See you in a minute. Hello, whiskey folk. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Thursday night. Welcome to the vPub. It's wonderful to see you all. I hope you're in a comfortable spot, and I hope you're ready to get excited about making wee plans to travel for your next whiskey-themed trip. Whether that's because you're here domestically alongside me, I'm just the same as anyone. I know I live in Scotland, but I'm really, really keen to get out there and experience the whiskey landscape again. The whiskey landscape and more. So it counts for anybody. If you're domestically, if you're based in the UK, if you're across continental Europe or further beyond, if you're across the Atlantic, if you're in Asia, it doesn't matter where you are. If you're thinking about planning for a future trip to Scotland, that's what we're going to discuss tonight. The best way to kind of think about the practical side of things, way to give general advice, to consider different reasons that people would come to Scotland and different ways they want to approach the whole whiskey-themed trip thing, and just kind of share with you what might be the best, most functional, practical advice, and try and drop in a few wee hints and tips as well to inspire. I have to say that before I jump into the lounge and welcome everybody tonight, the most common question I'm asked on this channel is exactly this topic. People from all over the world regularly send me direct messages, emails, whatever it may be, just to say, oh, we're thinking about coming to Scotland, and, you know, we really love the things that you talk about and the places, and you recalling your stories and your trips, Roy. What advice could you give us? Where should we stay? Where should we go? What should we see? That kind of thing. I'll read out a wee example message in a bit. But if you imagine that scenario, that situation, that people are planning this thing, regardless of where you are in the world, that's what we're going to try and cover tonight. I'm going to bring in somebody that's done it a couple of times already and is super enthusiastic about it and wants to share her stories and her snippets, epiphanies, and little bits of advice. And that's Leanne from Scotch on the Bayou over in Louisiana. Fantastic person, Leanne. I've been able to spend time with her a couple of times, and I'm looking forward to welcoming her a wee bit later. Then after that, after we've kind of built up this kind of excitement, perhaps, as we're hoping, is that we're going to bring in Aeneas O'Hara from Away from the Ordinary. And he has actually started a business in recent years. Obviously, things have changed during the pandemic, but he started a business in very recent years in order to do this very thing, to give people custom itineraries to suit them specifically, in order to give them the best possible experience that they could have. Now, he's not exclusively involved in whiskey, but he himself, he's a passionate whiskey geek, and so is able to do exactly that if people would like it. I'm going to jump into the lounge just now and welcome some of you dedicated barflies and beautiful whiskey folk. How are you all? I hope you're all doing very well. Gregor Dinkman is in. He's saying, hello, Roy. How are you? I'm very comfortable, Gregor. I went live on Sunday night with patrons, and I did a lock-in, and I was remarkably sunburned. I'd managed to burn my scalp, my forehead, everything. So I'm feeling a wee bit better tonight, Gregor, and it's nice to welcome you. And Anthony Lambert is here saying, evening, Roy. What? No pint of Belhaven Best tonight. I have a glass of Penderyn in my hand, or Penderyn, to celebrate Wales's football success at the moment. Yes, Wales are doing a wee bit better than Scotland. So far, only one game in, of course, but we've got England tomorrow night at Wembley. Scotland is going to go into shut down almost tomorrow night when that kicks off. Very much looking forward to that. Nice to welcome you in, Anthony, and congratulations on the performance of the Welsh. Superb. Mark Goins is in. Good to see you, Mark. Wonderful to welcome you here. Whiskey Games Matt Bishop is saying, I think we're all going on a whiskey hunt. Aye, as soon as the doors open up again. Chris is in as well. Good to see you, Chris. Mark Rayner, I think that's Mark Rayner, that's Leanne's husband, I think. Mark, wonderful to welcome you in. How are you doing? Block is here. Ian Graham. I was just speaking to Ian Graham, wasn't I, on an email. Saying, evening, Roy, I hope you're well. Thanks for the quick email reply this evening. Excellent, Ian. Thanks very much for reaching out to me, my friend. Andy C is in. Good to see you, Andy. Whiskey Mystery, that's Phil and Deepa. Fantastic. You guys were just live, no doubt. I look forward to catching that up on the replay and working out what you were able to. I managed to catch Phil and Deepa's a blind challenge they shared with me. They went through this amazing thing. I don't want to spoil it. One of the recent ones that they did, at one point they thought they were maybe drinking Klein Leash, and then they thought they were going to be drinking. They were all over the place, and then eventually they revealed this whiskey, which went straight into their top 10. They thought it was absolutely amazing. The only thing I'll say, not to spoil it too much, is that it was a 14-year-old at 46%. And it's been a previous Whiskey of the Year on Aquavitae channel too. Fantastic video, guys, and it's wonderful to welcome you in here. Jimmy Legg is here saying, looks like the tan from Sunday didn't take. No, Jimmy, I have to keep working at it. As Billy Connolly used to say, in Scotland, we have to, we're blue, we have to tan white first, then we go pink. And then maybe if we're really lucky, we might take a wee bit of a tan. Generally, I wouldn't say I tan too well. Neil Cochrane is here. Good to see you, Neil. Shayla's here as well. Menno, multi-mission Menno. You and I need to get our heads together and get you back to host another wee quiz, don't we? There's only 3 or 4 vPubs left before the summer break, or 3, something like that. So we need to get a Menno quiz in before we break up for the summer break. JG is in saying whiskey cheers. Good to see you, JG. And Hellswood is in. Of course you are. Good evening, Mr. Dove. Good evening, Helen. I hope Andy is with you tonight. Let's see who else. Who might? Lots of orange. If you're trying to get my attention, yes, absolutely do what the lounge is doing right now. And they highlight orange. Whiskey Throttle Daniel's in. Hello. Where was this info when I travelled to Scotland? Well, it's going to be interesting, Daniel, because there could have been so many people like yourself, honestly, that I could have reached out to invite to come in. So many people from Europe. My friend McAllen Fine and Rare Doc, he could have given great advice. Eric Waite from Eric Waite Whiskey Studies over in California. He's been over a couple of times extensively travelling for whiskey in Scotland. So there's loads and loads of people out there I could have reached out to say, what were your experience and things? We could really stack this and have lots of stories and anecdotes and things. But I reached out to Leanne first, and I thought it would be good to have somebody from the community like Leanne, and then somebody that does it more of a kind of expert role. So that's how I've worked it. Daniel, I hope we've got some treasures and tips to share with you. Ben Demon Hunter is saying, howdy, Roy, and Slancheva to you, Ben. It's always great to welcome you in, my friend. Time for a dram. Gregor is here. I need to show something that Gregor's been involved in. I've finally got it here to reveal. And Eric Cunliffe is saying, this will be 2 birthdays now I missed in Scotland, but I'm grateful for this video. This will help immensely for the future tour. Don't know if it will, Eric, but that's certainly the intent. I am worried, as I said at the intro, that all we'll actually do is exacerbate that desire, that pent-up desire that we have to travel. You know, it's really just, we probably realised how privileged we were to have the freedom of travel that we did previously. And to be without it for the last year and a half has really hit home how much we get from that, how much we enjoy it, how much we look forward to it. So, you know, I know that it's an odd time to talk about it, Eric, honestly, because we're still in various countries across the world. We're still in various different states of dealing with the pandemic. So the idea of travel is just quite honestly ludicrous right now. But I think what's going to happen is that because of that pent-up demand, because of that frustration, when travel is permitted again, I think it's going to explode. And that means that we need to be even more careful about planning than we previously were. Let me show you this thing. Gregor from Gregor McWee, Time for a Dram Gregor, put together some artwork after the Jim McEwan vPub back at the start of May, on 6th of May, when Jim McEwan was here. A fabulous vPub, wonderful feedback from you. It's become quite a legendary thing, and it was certainly one that I enjoyed much more than I even imagined or expected I would. I thought it was fabulous, and it inspired Gregor to make some really, really interesting artwork. Now, we wondered what to do with this artwork or whatever, and we can't really, it's not the kind of thing we can share, and you'll see why in a second. But if I treat it as something that I'm not really intending to kind of sell or to kind of I'm never going to make it on a t-shirt or anything like that, because it uses very familiar little figurines, as you see. So this is to celebrate Jim McEwan's Highland toast. So here it's got this little figurine. This obviously it's clearly taken from Lego, and it's got it phonetically, his Highland toast. It's got Machleash, Stayleash, Swashleash, and Seasleash, and then Slanchava at the end. And obviously it's and it's also got a little description about what it's all about down here, and it's got the Gaelic version as well as the phonetic version here. Lots of other little Easter eggs as well. But this is a sticker. So this is something I've had a few hundred or a couple of hundred, 200 or 300 of these printed off. And I'm going to just ship them with merch. I'll just you don't need to click a box or anything like that. Anything that you order, I'll just ship it alongside with. I'll need to put it in a stiffened envelope or something. And I've taken a tasting book here and I've put it inside my tasting book here, these stickers. And also my vPub kind of notebook, my diary thing. I've also got it adorning the front of that as well. I think it's very, very cool. I have shipped across a very special one to Jim to say thank you. I got one printed on a nice board, and I also got it made up in Brookladdy colours. Gregor made it in Brookladdy colours as well, so that we could make a nice gift to say thank you to Jim too. Excuse me. So if anybody's ordering any merch or whatever, or if I'm shipping anything to anybody at any point in time, as long as I can make the package. Excuse me, it's not COVID, it's simply a very dry throat. I'm sipping water, perhaps I should have a dram instead. As long as I can ship this without it curling or getting bashed or whatever to you, you'll get this along with a merch order. Everybody that's been asking about the glass toppers, the acrylic coins, they're back in stock. They're in stock now. You can get these shipped to you. They're back. Listen, the reason that they go out of stock is that I'm always constantly thinking that I've saturated the market and everybody's got what they need and we don't need any more. It's expensive to buy this and keep it in sitting in for a while. And there's a bit of a lead time, of course, in getting things sorted out. But they're back now, and hopefully they'll be able to last a wee bit longer this time. If you're curious about anything, if you're interested about anything, any stock or any t-shirt sizes or whatever it may be on the store, please send me a wee email, whisky@aquavitae.com. I've recently topped up on some t-shirt and polo shirt sizes too, so almost everything in that side is back in stock. The only thing I'm delinquent with is glassware. And I'm working on that, what to do at that as well. So I hope you like this. It's great fun. I absolutely love it. I just love looking at it. It brings a smile to my face every time I see it. And I'd like to say thanks to Gregor McWee for the effort that you put into making this up. I think it's a fabulous wee memento. Cheers, Gregor. Cheers to everyone. Thank you. Good stuff. Alistair McPhail is in. Good to see you, Alistair. He's saying evening all on Aquavitae, popping in for a few minutes. It's a school night. You're down in East Africa as well, aren't you, Alistair? Wonderful to be able to welcome you, even if it's just for a wee while, my friend. Graham Fraser is in as well. Good to see you, Graham. And Whiskey Malt Content is in. Fantastic. Good to see you as well. I think that's Vlad. And somebody has just become an Aquavitae. Vin from No Nonsense Whiskey has just joined up and signed up to be a member of the Aquavitae Barflies. I thought you already were, Vin, but it's good to welcome you. Either on board or back on board, my friend. Good to have you in as well, Vin. Good to have you here, buddy. Gregor Dykeman is saying that's brilliant. Do you ship merch to the Netherlands as well? Yes, I'll ship merch anywhere. Whiskey's a different thing. Obviously, samples and whiskey and things, that's tricky to ship. But merch I can ship anywhere, honestly. Watchman999 is saying, can I buy a digital version of the Highland Toast? Oh, I'm not sure how I feel or how we feel about, because the Aquavitae thing's on there, the Gregor McWee thing's on there. I'll have a wee think about that. I'll have a think about it, see if we can anything we can do. And Anthony Lambert is saying that unfortunately it's pretty difficult getting over to the UK from here in Germany. So planning on a distillery visit to the Harz Mountains. German single malt is getting better and better. What distillery, Anthony, is in the Harz Mountains? My first ever time in Germany in 1991 was to the Harz Mountains, St. Andreasberg, a wee tiny place called Sonnenberg. I had a fabulous time there. I absolutely loved it, Anthony. So yes, and I agree with you as well, that isn't whiskey generally getting better almost everywhere? It's a fantastic time to be enjoying it. Era McFault is in as well. Era, I just replied to your comment. Era was asking about whiskey academies and things for travelling to Scotland. And I've actually got a theme coming up. I think it's going to be just after summer shutdown, where I've reached out to Rachel McNeil of the Islay Whisky Academy. And we're getting our heads together to come up with a nice topic that could showcase what these academies, and specifically the Islay Whisky Academy, is capable of bringing in terms of a whiskey and education. And it's super interesting. I would love to do it myself, and I think that could be great fun. Almost like something that could kind of dovetail quite nicely with the topic that we're talking about tonight as well. Falscraft is saying, no, the market is not saturated. I am aware. I haven't ordered any merch from you yet, but I will soon. Falscraft, there's plenty time, and hopefully this time there's plenty in stock. The hardest thing is to work out what is to try and predict what you need and what sizes people are. My goodness. Paul M is saying, good evening, Roy. That looks like a new name, Paul. Nice to welcome you in. He's saying, Slancher from Montreal. Slancher, straight back to you in Montreal. Excellent to have you in the vPub. And Gavin is saying, hello, a bit late tonight. Gavin, nonsense. Never a bit late to the pub. Never a bit late. Let's kick things off. I'm going to reach out to my first guest. You'll know who this lady is, don't you? Leanne. She's been around the community for a long time, and then eventually we started to recognise her as Scotch on the Bayou. I first recognised Leanne when I was over in Texas in 2019. I spotted her across the lounge because I'd seen her appearing on a live stream with the Scotch for Dummies previously. And I went straight over to Leanne to introduce myself, and I've been privileged to know her since then. I've been able to meet her here in Scotland too. And while we were together in Scotland, while she was actually here with me, we were talking, and the way that she was talking about what she had got up to and her whiskey experiences and things, you know, I was a little bit, it was difficult for me to actually host Leanne in any way or help her or give her advice, but she didn't need any. She'd been here before. And the way that she talked about it and the way she talked about her experiences and how she got to enjoy Scotland struck me that she had really found a love for the country. And it also struck me that a lot of the things that she was talking about was not whiskey related at all. And it's a common theme. After she left me, she went off to spend a week over in Islay with Rachel and lots of other folk for the Islay Whisky Academy. And I thought she would be a perfect person to get to talk about the first part of tonight's topic. Leanne, if you're in good shape, give me a wee thumbs up. Tell me if you're good to come in. Fantastic. Leanne, how are you doing?
I'm great, Roy. I'm great. Good to see you.
Welcome behind the bar at the vPub.
Thank you.
This feels like you've been on before, haven't you?
Yes. So I've done, is it a Speyside? We did that one time. And then when I was there in 2019, we did an impromptu live that night.
We did.
That's
fun. Right. That's right. And I think it was you but when I was in a wee smaller room, I was in the small room upstairs, right? And you nicknamed it my lair. It's still very much the Aquavite lair.
That's
absolutely.
Right.
But maybe next time we'll have a bit more space the next time that you're here.
Okay.
It's nice to welcome you behind the bar virtually in the meantime. Okay. But when I was obviously you've gone quite far down the road because you've actually got your own YouTube channel now. You're doing the same thing. You're broadcasting whiskey and whiskey reviews and things. I know you've just started it, but you seem to be enjoying that, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's crazy.
Scotch on the Bayou, yes.
Yep. Scotch on the Bayou.
So if you can give us a quick synopsis, then I'm going to search for the link to your channel to drop into the chat. But how does somebody kind of casually just decide to take a tour of Scotland, and then for a chain of events to happen that you end up going back and, you know, from no whiskey experience whatsoever to immersing yourself in whiskey and then starting a YouTube channel? How did that all happen before we got into tonight's topic?
Yeah. So back in 2016, I was hitting a milestone birthday. We'll just leave it at that. No numbers. And decided, I was kind of like, let's do something big. And I was talking to my husband, Mark, who's on the chat tonight. It's like, I want to go to Scotland, and we have some ancestral ties to Scotland, but it just seemed like a really cool place. And I didn't really want to travel abroad too many different places that for some reason I just wanted to get to Scotland. Very long story short. And he's like, yeah, I've been there. I've done that. And he's very supportive, and so supportive when I said, well, okay, I'm just going to go by myself. He said, okay, just be safe and let me know where you are. And I literally just went to Scotland by myself. I went for about 2 weeks. And
what year was this? When was this?
2016. It was the autumn of 2016. And went over and stayed in Edinburgh for about, 4 days, and then rented a car and just drove. I drove up into the Highlands, and I had built the entire trip around a music festival on Jura, because music is very important to me.
Yes.
Whiskey was not even on my radar, not even close. But that's how I found myself in Scotland in 2016.
But you must have been vaguely aware that we made a drink here, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I had this idea that it was like bourbon. And bourbon is very prevalent, of course, here. I'm from the South, if you can guess from this accent. Which I have to say, your daughters, after meeting them, said that I sounded like Charlotte from The Princess Frog. So the idea that I'm a Disney princess sidekick just made my day. I can't tell you how much I just love your girls and your little boy too. But anyway,
I'm so glad that wasn't in any way offensive to you, but it sounds very much like something the girls would say.
No, not at all. But yeah, it was one of those things where I just had a preconceived idea, and what do assumptions are not very good, right? That it was like bourbon, and bourbon's very sweet to me, and just was not my drink. It was, it was more like a margarita girl. I don't do beer. I just, that was just kind of my speed, And, but as we discussed earlier, my vocation is technical writing and process writing and engineering writing, and I wanted to see how things worked. And this whiskey is all over the place. It's everywhere you look in Scotland. And I happened to be in Oban at the time, and there was a distillery, boom, right there. So I said, let's go. I'll just go in there and see how this is made. How in the world can something be made out of just water and yeast and barley and some thyme? How can that happen? And then they had all these, it's going to taste like honey and vanilla and oranges. And I'm like, it's barley. How's that happen?
Yeah.
So I went through the tour, and I had a taste. And that taste took me on a different trajectory, a totally different way. It's just like a hard right. And there it was.
Could we call it an epiphany?
It was a light bulb moment. It was, I say trajectory because you think about how you just kind of orbit through your life, and you just kind of do your thing and you do your thing. And this just knocked me out of the park. It was really tasty, and I enjoyed it. And it got me thinking, I was like, this is not bourbon. This is not sweet. This is so very different. And I have to tell you, that first time I tried to be so brave and not let the alcohol overtake me. Right. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, if I just keep my nose and just like, don't like inhale it really quickly. I won't cough. Don't cough. Just, get in there and bruise through it. And sure enough, I was like, wow, this is really good. And it was Oban Distiller's Edition that I was served.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that particular bottle is very near and dear to my heart,
And what you're saying, everything that you're saying, and that you're from Louisiana in the States, and the southern United States.
Right.
I'm from the central belt of Scotland, and your recollection of that visit, that experience, that epiphany is almost this, just a different location, a different cast of characters maybe, but it's the same story. That epiphany is like, oh wow, this is nothing is what I assumed it was.
No.
Chris Schmierer has bought me a dram to say one day I shall visit the Holy Land of Whiskey. Until then, I'll be transported by the drams. That's exactly what we have to try and do, Chris. Yes. We have to kind of use the whiskey and do it. And the more you do it, the more impactful it's going to be when you arrive here. And so many of those flavors make so much more sense.
Yeah.
Is that me exaggerating a wee bit? Is that me gilding a little?
No, it isn't. And I think, too, once you get into it, because the next day I went to get to Jura, you have to go through this island called Isla.
Yes.
And I stopped at this place called Lafroig. And you talk about, and now for something completely different, Lafroig, you know. It's looking at the process that makes all of the, you know, makes this liquid that we are enthusing and geeking over. But it's the people. It's the people that you meet. And even on that first trip, those people that I met that were so passionate about their craft and what they were doing, I wanted to pay attention and I wanted to be respectful of that, you know? Yeah. And so, yes, in Lafroig, like in the inside of a barbecue pit. Okay, I can relate.
Yeah.
It's very, very different than that, you know, orangey, honey, vanilla type elixir I had the day before.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it's kind of funny because, Leanne, you're very typical of someone who's been traveling to Scotland for decades before there were visitor centres. I think most of the people that we're going to be speaking to tonight is going to be the flip side of that. They're going to be coming because they've already had whiskey's claws into them. So they're coming, do a whiskey thing in Scotland. Right. When they arrive, they're going to discover much more than whiskey.
Yes.
When you travelled over, you were here for the much more than whiskey, and whiskey got its claws into you. So it's interesting that it was flipped. It's interesting how we can take advantage of that today, because we're more than just distilleries and shops and the infrastructure around there to support this enthusiasm for whiskey. But we've also got educational centres like the Isla Whiskey Academy. We've got so much more on hand. It's not just visiting and seeing how the production happens. You can put on wellies and walk up the hill and actually dig peat, and you can see the water source, and you can do all of these other more interesting, deeper things. Right. So the timing as well, I think, is interesting. Yeah. But anyway, so you've got hooked. Oban, Lafroig, you go to Jura, you have your amazing experiences in Jura with a music festival.
Right.
And then that obviously inspired you to come back to Scotland again. But it wasn't for a touristy thing. It was fully... No.
So coming back, then it was, okay, now it's upon me to learn. I really want to learn. You know, and let me just say, as far as traveling to Scotland, the whiskey, we have a term in Louisiana, and it's called lagniappe. And lagniappe is the baker's dozen. It's the little something extra, okay? Yep. Whiskey to Scotland is the lagniappe. It's the little something extra, because your country is gorgeous. Yeah. Your people are so nice. Yes. The landscape is rugged and unforgiving, but welcoming. Yeah. And going through, and I went because of music and culture and history, and I got all that, but the lagniappe, that little something extra, was that whiskey. Yeah. You know, so coming home, I wanted to know more about that. I wanted to know more about whiskey, how it's made, you know, what should I buy? I came home with 3 bottles. I came home with the Distiller's Edition, a Jura's 16-year-old that's discontinued now, and I think a triple cask from Lafroig. And I was thrilled, you know, oh man, I got 3 bottles. Yay, what a collection. I don't
the
need
naivety,
to get over here to see what I have now around me.
Yeah.
But I wanted to learn more. So I dove into different things, and, you know, between YouTube and Google and books and magazines and different things to learn. So learning then became my prerogative. And from that, I found out about an opportunity in a competition to win a spot for the residential 5-day course at the Isla Whiskey Academy by the absolutely fabulous Rachel McNeil.
Rachel McNeil, yeah.
They broke the mold. The woman is something. She is fantastic. And I cannot even imagine anybody could do what she does, but she does it so well.
Yeah.
So it was an essay, and I had to write an essay on why I wanted to do, why I wanted to go to this, what was the benefit for Scotch and what was the benefit for Scotch whiskey and Scotland. And I was like, you know what? I'm a woman of a certain age, and we've been relegated to the schnapps and vodka aisle long enough. Women can have whiskey too, and we don't need anybody's permission. And more people need to know about that, you know. And so that it wasn't necessarily a platform, you know, it was just more of an awareness thing. And I wanted to know more about how it was made.
Superb. And you won that competition.
I won.
And interestingly, and I only found this out not from you, it was, or if you did, this detail escaped me at the time, but Rachel McNeil told me that your winning entry was not drawn by her, it was drawn by our First Minister.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there were 80 entries, and then there was taken down to 12, and 12 were sent to her for her to choose out of the 12. And
she picked early and she gets something. She gets some things right. She gets some things right. We'll leave it at that. Whiskey Central Sheila is saying amen, amen, amen. The words you say there strike me and they make me think twice, because we know that women in whiskey need to be better represented to show people what is actually happening behind the scenes in whiskey. The women that are involved, the women that are involved in making and promoting and educating and driving whiskey forward. It's not always represented at events and communities and things. That needs to be driven forward. Yeah. But women of a certain age, that's absolutely a thing, because that is often very misrepresented, I think.
Well, and I'll tell you what, we've got disposable income. Somebody better start marketing to us.
That's absolutely right. The women with the disposable income, remember that. All industries everywhere. No. Yeah. So, I mean, you're obviously preaching to, and you know who Sheila, she's putting out content now as well. She's doing absolutely great, and it's wonderful to have her in the community too. Molasses is saying it was the landscape of Scotland, not whiskey, that made me fall in love with Scotland. We camped on Glen Etive, which was completely magical, and whiskey was like the icing on the cake. That's the lanyap you're talking about, right?
That's right.
Falstaff said, I was in Scotland once before in 97 or 98. The museum in Edinburgh was very similar to now, but I was astonished at the lack of whiskey experiences. Otherwise, that's exactly, Falstaff, that's exactly the point I'm making, that you know, timing is so much, because as Leanne said, if you come to Scotland now, you're literally surrounded by whiskey opportunities, whereas 20, 30 years ago, they were there, but you had to find them, you had to seek them out. It was kind of, it was just starting to get traction back then. And Alan is saying, Roy, how proud does that make you feel? Alan, I'll say something interesting. Let me riff for a second, Leanne, if that's okay.
Sure, please.
I think it's something. Aeneas is going to have an interesting take on this as well when he comes in later, because Aeneas is an expat. And I have had the fortune, the privilege, let's say, of being an expat, living elsewhere in the world for long enough to understand what we have here. And I never understood it before. When you live in something, it's the thing. It's just the thing. Everybody has this, don't they? And then you travel and you see the rest of the world has all these amazing different contrasts to offer you. And it's striking. After a while, you contrast it with what Scotland has to offer and you see it in a different light. You start to look at your own country with the colours turned up. The saturation has been amplified. When I came home from the south of England after living for a few years in the south of England, I remember walking out the door in the morning and taking a breath of air, and not just taking a breath of clean, fresh air, but it being so thick and clean that it felt like I was drinking the air. Now, that might be a comment on the humidity, of course, and the dampness and everything, of course, but it was so striking. And that was something that I would never have, without that contrast, without that being away for a while. So in time, I have managed to work out what Scotland has to offer and what other people, but I still enjoy seeing it through their eyes. In fact, the two videos that have the least attention on my channel are the Scotch test dummies videos when they came to Scotland in 2019. I've only put 2 parts out of the trilogy so far, but those are kind of travel log, vlog style videos about trying to see my country through their eyes and with a whiskey theme, because it fascinates me. And it does, Alan, it does genuinely make me feel proud, if that can be forgiven. I do really, really enjoy that thing. And I'm sure other people must get it wherever they live. They must enjoy seeing their country through other people. And like you say, the lanyap, the extra layer of icing on the cake, the whiskey is amazing. And everyone is saying you're sounding like Dougie MacLean. Dougie MacLean is, the Edredor 12 is named after Dougie MacLean's Caledonia song, right? Yes, that's exactly what that song is about. Absolutely, I get it. But you've come here, Leanne. Mm-hmm. So when I decide to do a vPub about why people should come to Scotland and then to talk about what to consider when you do come to Scotland, I'm preaching to the choir, right?
Well, I think we can always learn something, right? I've only been there twice. And here's the irony of ironies. A year ago today, I was to leave to come back over there.
I know.
Today.
I know.
I brought this. This is the journal that I had made and prepped for that trip. And I looked at it and I was like, June 17th, dang it. But we can always still learn. And I think part of that is figuring out what you want to get accomplished, whether you're going to Scotland or whether you're going to anywhere, is what do you want out of it? You'll get out of it what you put into it. And that is a big part of the planning, is figuring that out. That first trip, I didn't plan so much. But I had a goal of just absorbing. So I didn't really have a big agenda. And because of that big agenda, I just decided to go to a distillery one day. So I got something out of it really by having a loose type itinerary, if you will. I had not booked all my accommodations. Don't ever do that.
Yeah,
I think we'll get into some nitty gritty, but first and foremost, know where you're sleeping every night. I did not do that in the first trip, and it worked
Well,
out.
I think the first trip for you was very much about adventure and exploration.
Yes. It was to prove that I could do it.
And I'm going to drop in, we've said lanyap and kind of that thing. I'm going to drop in another word that I think is going to repeat throughout the night, I hope. You allowed for serendipity.
Yes.
To play a hand.
Yes.
You allowed for the environment to shine a light and guide you a little bit, which I agree with you. Always know when you're going to be sleeping well in advance. But if you can make room in your itinerary, mm-hmm. I mean, that would be a takeaway that you would probably recommend to people, right?
Right. To make room and decide what you want to do. If you want to go because you want to taste, and you're not really into the education or the geekdom or that type, you just want to taste different things, then you can schedule that time you're over a little differently than if you're wanting to go over and immerse yourself into the education. Yeah. And if you are out for quantity, if you want to hit as many distilleries because you've got a bucket goal that you want to do that, that's a great goal. But you're just going to hit them instead of absorbing everything that they may have to offer. The day before I went to Islay in 2019, I scheduled the master blending class at Glengoyne, because looking at the itinerary at the Islay Whiskey Academy, we weren't really going to talk about blending, but Glengoyne was right there, and I could, boom, it was easy to get to from Glasgow, and it was unbelievable to sit there. I was the only person there, which I got to soak up all of Bill's time, and really get into the theory of it. Again, my day job is process and, instruction and how things work and workflow. So that was very interesting to me. That may not be the goal of everyone who wants to go over there. They just may say, I want to go to 5 Speysides in one day. Well, they're boom, boom, boom right after each other. That's attainable. I would say 5 Islas in one day would be cheating yourself. You wouldn't get as much out of that experience if you tried to put that many in one day.
And I think it is contextual. I think you're absolutely right. The people who are kind of, they've managed to escape from their other commitments. They can focus and indulge their own hobby, their own passions, and they say, right, I need to get to all these distilleries. I want to grab the distillery bottling. I want to do the thing. I want to see it. I want to feel it. Mm-hmm. But that's the priority. So they're not really going to be interested in a hike to a waterfall or to soak up or to hang out on the shoreline for a bit and speak to the local people and things. That's going to be their focus. My encouragement would be to, if you want to do that, absolutely do that. But my encouragement would always be to say, do you know what? When you're drinking that whiskey, that souvenir that you've taken back home, if you've managed to get some of the dirt under your fingernails, if you've managed to breathe the air and take a moment to take a walk around and speak to people and things, I think there's more delivered from the glass. You seem to understand the whiskey a wee bit more. Daniel Williams has bought me a dram and said, got tickets to the Whiskey Festival in The Hague on the 20th of November for me and my dad, and ordered Aquavitae shirts. Oh, bless you. So we can fly the colours. Feels like a trip, as I haven't done anything for so long. Daniel, thank you so much. It's already shipped. You would have got a notification today that your package is on the way to you, buddy. But when I saw the 2 different sizes, I wondered what that was about. Daniel, that sounds amazing. I hope you have a fantastic time over there, and thanks for flying the colours as well. And I've also had a dram bought for me by my friend Bill Monteith. Bill, so good to have you. And my grandparents came over to the States from Motherwell and Howwood, respectively. So hoping to get to Glasgow to visit their places of birth and to see Roy. Bill, you're not going to get in and out of here. If I'm around and if I'm available, there's no chance you're going to get out of here without me seeing you, my friend. That's amazing. Bill, thank you very, very much. And Daniel, thank you so much as well. Cheers to you both. So tell me, Leanne, what if we talk about weaving that serendipity into our plans and our itinerary? What were your takeaways from your trips? Takeaways that you could maybe help people who are planning a trip to kind of make room for? What surprised you? What would you, if somebody said to you, oh, I'm thinking of going to Scotland, but I don't really know where to start, what would you come up with?
I would ask them what their normal interests are. And because whatever it is, there's probably some variation of it there that they would find. For example, kind of off the cuff, my husband likes to do metal detecting, and so treasure hunting, and we've even looked at finding a club over there that could host him to go out and do a hunt for the day. Something that he gets some experience. And I guess that's the point, is it's an experience. You can go and see different things, but to be a part of something there, that's where I think you get a lot of value add back to it. It makes for the memory of it. It's something that you're going to get excited and tell your friends about. And it's also going to get you through the time when you can't go back. Yeah. And I have to tell you, that's been, it's this past year, and knowing that I won't be able to get back, and I hope maybe next year, we'll see. But doing that, I've got those pictures, I've got that experience, and to me, it all goes back down to the people. I remember I told you one of the experiences I had in 2016 that just took my breath away was going to the battlefield at Culloden. And the only other time, and down here in Louisiana, we got New Orleans and the voodoo and all the Gregor and all that kind of stuff. We believe in that stuff down here. Okay. I'm just saying. And I mean, the hairs on the back of my neck are coming up. And I mean, I was overwhelmed at the battlefield. And the next couple of days, I was staying overnight in Kinnicregg to catch the ferry to Islay. And the gentleman at the breakfast was asking me, well, tell me what you've done. And I told him about, I went to the battlefield. And he said, did you feel it? And I said, yes, I felt it. I've only felt that at the Alamo in San Antonio. it was just that kind of experience. I won't ever forget that. But I was able to share that with him. During the Isla Whiskey Academy, we're drinking the 2011 Isla barley. The farmer who grew the barley is pouring my dram on his farm.
Yeah.
That experience, it would taste good in a bar, but can I tell you how good that dram tasted in a barn with his two dogs chasing a rat and the pigs over in the corner? It was just lovely. And that's the experience I would say, yes, go find and see, but what can you experience while you're there? And that, to me, those are the best souvenirs to bring back home.
Absolutely. And it's spending that extra time. Even if you're just doing a distillery tour, try and premiumize the tour, because do something that's more than just a kind of look-see and a look around and a dram at the end or whatever.
Right.
Try and do a deeper experience. I know some of them are expensive. Don't pay too much, but pay a bit more, because when you've long forgotten about how much money it costs you, you'll still have an amazing memory that's a bit more of a deeper experience. But doing something like that is really special. And that you can just talk to somebody, channel your inner Southern woman, and just start talking to strangers. And you will find out so much information and relatable experiences that way. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It's just hopefully they won't think you're crazy. You just try to do my accent and you'll get away with it. Absolutely superb. And I think that one of the things that I've got a friend who's not from Scotland. She lives around the corner, and I said, well, how can you live here? How can you stay in this country? How can you? And I said, the weather. I said, it's always so damp and so grey all the time. And I'm just kind of joking with her and things. And she said, why do you need nice weather when the people are so warm?
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, I'm just getting really quite choked. And I'm thinking, oh really? And she says, oh yeah, it's wonderful here. And I don't know. I think maybe we overcompensate maybe for the weather and in strange ways. But what I've come to realize over lockdown is that when we can't socialize indoors, we have to socialize outdoors. Really, it's never been truer to say there is no such thing as bad weather, just wrong clothes. Get out and just wear the right clothes and just deal with the weather. It's fine. Jimmy Legg is asking, can I get a decent pizza delivery on Isla? Absolutely, Jimmy.
Yes.
There's a place in Bamore called the Pizzeria, P-E-A-T, Pizzeria.
Very good.
And they do a fantastic pizza. You won't go wanting for a pizza if that's your thing on Isla. But while you're on Isla, by all means, indulge yourself with pizza, whatever it may be. But try some of the local food as well. Try some of the things that may not seem appealing at first approach, and try seafood when you can get it fresh too. Yeah. Did you have any haggis while you were here?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and blood sausage, which, in Louisiana we eat stuff that nobody wants to eat. And haggis was kind of like boudin, but with oatmeal instead of rice. I don't know. In a different kind of organ, but and then we had that, and curry. Curry tripped me up. I was like, what's curry? John McShane was, oh, man, we're going to go get some curry. If you know John, he just uses his whole body to talk. He was like, man, we're going to get some curry. And I was like, okay, what's a curry? And we call that like smothered roast or smothered lamb or something. It's just cooked down to bits and pieces, and but it was delicious. Everything. I have to tell you,
Indian cuisine in the United Kingdom is one of the most amazing fusions ever. I'm just so grateful for it. We can't talk about it too much because I'm literally that's what I'm thinking about right now. Chris Banks Wildlife is saying, we have been travelling to Scotland for including nearly 40 of its islands for the last 35 years. The most fascinating was St Kilda. Wow, very remote. We live in Derbyshire, but our hearts are in Scotland. Chris, we've met. He's documented amazing things through his wildlife photography, amazing scenes of Scotland as well. One of your photographs is hanging just outside this door, Chris, of an otter funnily enough. And that's a story I hear from a lot of people, that despite living elsewhere in the world, they still leave a little bit of themselves back home in Scotland. What other tips would you give, Leanne, if somebody is sitting there right now and thinking, I really fancy going down to the Florida Keys again, or I fancy that kind of Caribbean trip, or I fancy a cultural trip to Europe or something. Right. What would you suggest that a trip to a whiskey-themed trip, because a lot of it is, it's easy to convince the folk, the whiskey enthusiasts, right? It's easy to convince them because they'll come for the whiskey. But what would you say to somebody who's been surprised by you as well? Paris is lovely, but Glasgow.
Well,
it's a hard sell.
You know what? I don't need to create an international incident, but I don't really want to go to Paris. I don't really want to go to London unless I can get to Glasgow or Edinburgh. And that's just me, okay? Because I know where my interests are. But Glasgow and Edinburgh are very different. Yes. And
in a good way.
In a very, very good way. And they both are gems. They're absolute gems. In the States, we'll drive, like we're driving to Austin. We'll drive anywhere. We'll drive to New Orleans for dinner. That's an hour away. Well, it's not an hour between, really, is it? Between Glasgow and Edinburgh to drive?
45, 50 minutes, yes. Right? Yeah.
So it's really nothing. And it's easy to get on a train and go from one to the other. If you're in the States, things are much closer together if you're in the city. And it's very easy to get around, kind of know where your center is, and then spoke out from where you want to go. So in Edinburgh, I was there. I wanted to see, one of the first things in big cities that I like to do are to take the bus tour, the double-decker bus or whatever, because that gives you in one fell swoop a lay of the land. And you can kind of get an idea. It's a hop on, a hop off, and you can kind of see where things are and what you might want to spend more time later. Having kind of researched that on the front end. In each of those cities, there are going to be particular whiskey, I guess, like the whiskey experience and different things like that are more mass open, kind of general whiskey type experiences that you can do. Getting into the distilleries, that is where if you have a distillery that is really near and dear to your heart, then look at going, what would it entail to go there? Can you get there from one of the major cities on a day trip? Or is it something where you need to go probably like up into Speyside, you may need to be there. For Islay, you're going to need to be there. Islay, to get from Glasgow to Islay by car is a day because you got a ferry ride, and it may be a day and a half because you may have to catch the ferry at 6 o'clock in the morning and then go over the next day. But it's $150 to jump on a plane and get over there in an hour. So it just kind of depends on what your time is like and what your priorities are. And I would say prioritize what you do want to see and what you do want to experience. And then maybe back off some so that you give yourself time to rest and to enjoy and to soak it all up and really get the most out of it. For us in the States, that's a haul to get over there. I mean, it's a little easier if you're in, in European Union. You could kind of jump over there a little faster than we can. So we want to try to get everything done, while we're there. And that's really not practical to be able to absorb it. So
I think that's good advice. I think that's very good advice. Because I have a suspicion that for so many, especially if it's a successful trip, it won't be your last time.
No.
So you can pick up where you left off, what you missed out on before. Right. Fantastic, Leanne. I think I almost pick up some kind of like a little prickle of emotion from you and things. It's not just enthusiasm. You genuinely have a passion for this thing, whatever it is. We'll try and talk about it a wee bit more tonight. But that's why I reached out to you. That's why I hoped that other people could pick up on how it's kind of affected you. And, And not just because I'm trying to sell something, but because it resonates so much with so many people that have been here and felt a similar thing.
Right.
You know, grown men stand on the beach in Islay and sob. And you say, why are you crying? I'm happy. Leave me alone. And don't expect me to explain to you why I'm crying.
Yeah.
It's a thing. You feel connected with the land.
Yeah.
People,
it becomes personal.
Place. Yeah. It's everything. And it's very regenerative and very positive. Leanne, are you able to stay with us throughout the rest of the stream? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because I think you are up for playing a wee game of, is it a Speyside later, aren't you?
Yeah, I could do that.
Okay, fantastic, superb. And maybe even I could convince you to stay for the quiz too.
Yeah.
It would be superb to have you hanging out with us a wee bit longer. I'll drop you into the background just now and I'll raise this very, very grateful glass to you over, and I'll drop in, if I can, another link to your channel.
Well, thank you.
Paste.
Yeah.
There we go. That's, oops. That was not, it's not what I meant to do, Leanne, sorry. I meant to click enter there. There we go.
There we go.
And I'll raise a wee glass. Thank you so much, Leanne, and I'll see you in a wee bit.
Thank you. Sláinte y'all.
Sláinte y'all, of course. Fantastic. This is actually a Bunnahabhain that I'm sipping. And it's interesting because when I talked about the Scotch Test Dummies videos earlier, the ones that aren't really viewed very heavily on my channel, it's Dummies in Scotland 1 and 2, part 1 and 2. The first part is kind of Glasgow and taking a trip over to Islay, getting to Ardbeg. The second part is mostly focused on Islay right up until our departure from Islay. But Billy Sinclair was there on the pier at Bunnahabhain talking to Scott and Bart in an interview, and I was recording it. And it's kind of the reason that I was thinking about having a Bunnahabhain tonight is because he said something that struck me. He said, if people are going to make the effort to come all the way to Scotland, that's a big hike. It takes a lot of effort. And if they're in Scotland, it's going to take them a lot of effort to come and visit Islay. And if they're on Islay, it's going to take them a lot of effort to visit the most remote and difficult to get to distillery on Islay, that is Bunnahabhain. Billy, let me tell you that you need to encourage people to do that as much as possible, because one of my favourite spots on that entire island is that place up in the northeast of Islay. It's an absolutely fabulous distillery to visit. All the distilleries on Islay are fabulous to visit, honestly. But Bunnahabhain has managed to capture a lot of people's imaginations, especially looking over the Sound of Islay over to the Paps of Jura across the water there. An amazing place. Cheers, everyone. Before I bring in my next guest, I did miss a super chat, didn't I? Jimmy Legg is saying, where do I stay in Campbelltown? Aeneas might be able to help you there, Jimmy, but my advice to you would be it doesn't really matter. There's plenty of hotels and plenty of accommodation down and around Campbelltown. It doesn't really matter, and Campbelltown is a really, really kind of small little town anyway. Be able to walk around and do exactly what you want to do while you're down there. And Alice saying, Roy, Leanne is such a great guest. My next trip to Scotland will be for a short honeymoon break in September, hopefully. Yes, and I can't wait. Fingers crossed for you, Alan. I hope you really make it, and I agree with you fully that Leanne is a great guest. I'm going to open a bottle before I bring in my guest now. And I've got a wee kind of message to read as well to kind of present for my next guest. This is a bottle of Raasay, and I have to I think Scott Monroe put me onto this one. I didn't queue up for this. I didn't go to the secondary market for this. Nothing at all. Scott found it online. I think he managed to get one himself, and he shared a link with me to say it was available, and I managed to get it. It wasn't a lot of money. I think it was 40-something pounds. It's not the inaugural from Raasay. This is their first main release. I think they're calling it the Móine R-01. Now, I've tried Raasay before, but this is the first time I've tried Raasay as an official single malt. And the reason that I want to open this tonight, this is going to be difficult for most people to get, absolutely. If you happen upon it, fine, great. But it's one of these kind of releases from a new distillery that everybody's kind of keen to get their hands on to see what's happening. It's going to be quite young. It tells us on this that the makeup is from peated and unpeated malt, from some rye casks, from chinkapin oak, and Bordeaux red wine casks, all going into this vatting. 46.4% ABV. It says on the label that it's non-chill filtered, natural colour, all the presentation that we like to see. Wow, it is peaty. And there is a wee bit of red wine cask there, absolutely. I'm going to leave it for a while. I've just uncorked it, as you see. But the reason that I've brought out this Raasay is that there's a kind of new dynamic happening in whiskey, and I think Raasay personifies it, and that is whiskey and travel together. It took a long time. Glenfiddich was a trailblazer again back in the 1960s, or maybe early 70s, don't quote me, that opened the first visitor experience there, where you could go in and actually see where the whiskey was being made, and lots of distilleries very, very quickly followed, to the point that it's become, you know, a big part of the experience. It's become a big revenue generator for them. And of course, everybody that comes and has a positive experience is potentially a good ambassador for that distillery and that brand going forward. So there's lots of positives about it. But then it's kind of grown beyond that as well. There's premiumized tours now. There's deeper tours. There's tours that you can do bolted onto the side of the distillery to see water sources and various things, to go to farms. All of these things. And then Raasay over there in the Isle of Raasay has literally built their hotel or their accommodation complex alongside, on the exact same site as the distillery. So you can literally turn up there to your accommodation and know that you're in the exact same site where they're making the whiskey. And it's gorgeous to look at as well. I would love to go over there and spend a bit of time at Raasay in the future. So there's this kind of whole new thing that's happening. Springbank has got their whiskey academy down there, or the whiskey school, where you can go and work there for a week. The lead time is very, very long. It's a couple of years down the road for any openings, I'm sure. Recently, Annandale were auctioning accommodation on the distillery, where you could go and work at this distillery as well with the accommodation. So this whiskey thing is becoming more and more complex, more and more layered, and more appealing, I think. Cheers, everyone. The previous Raasays that I've had have been much hotter than this. Cask strength. This is much more together. This is much more palatable, much more easy, much more mass market friendly. It's peaty. There's a nice lick of peat in there as well. There's lots of red fruits, red currant and things like that. That's maybe coming from that red wine. And there's a lovely, lovely sweetness to it as well. The peat is kind of ashen. There's a sootiness in there. Especially coming from the back of that really sweet and rich and kind of ripe fruits of the Bunnahabhain. This has got nicer, brighter top notes, more kind of white fruit, stone fruit, vanilla. Not overly sweet. There is a youthful spiritiness to this, but it's nice, it's in check. Oh, wow. And the wine, the red wine thing is, for anyone that's been watching me for long enough, know that it's got to be done very delicately, red wine casks for me, and it is here. It just brings a nice kind of dry fruit, red wine. That's quite nice. I'm really quite enjoying that. That's a nice wee dram to have to sip along. I'm going to bring in my next guest now. How are we doing for time? Not bad. We're about an hour in. This is a wee message that I had sent to me fairly recently. This is a few months back. We've had an exchange since this initial message, but this is very typical of the most popular message that gets sent to me on the channel. And I love receiving them, don't get me wrong, but it's very, very difficult for me to answer them. And maybe you can see why. One of the motivations for me doing this topic tonight was this very kind of message. This is from Chad and Kate. Hi, Chad and Kate. I hope you're picking us up. I hope you're watching. We are very excited as we've finally been able to arrange our trip to Scotland later this year. It's been a long time coming, and we simply can't wait. My fiancée and I both enjoy the channel and love our whiskey. We were hoping we could reach out for some tips, as we'd like to fit in as much whiskey fun as possible. We are particularly interested in places we should consider staying, and he puts in parentheses, should be close to distilleries, ! And what distilleries we should make sure not to miss. Any help or advice you give would be very welcome. Yours, Chad and Caitlin. It's Chad and Caitlin. So we had a bit of a to and fro. You can see how that's a difficult email for me to respond to, because there's lots and lots of kind of nebulous things in there. Well, what is it that you're actually interested in, trying to tie it down? So I was kind of going back and answering in a very generic way most of the time. It's the best I could do, lots of copy and paste and rough generalized guidance. And that's what kind of pushed me to say, I really need to do this topic. I need to do this thing. But don't just give my opinion and my thoughts, what I would do. Let's also talk to Leanne to understand what the value is. Is it really worth the trip? And I think you can see from Leanne's experiences, as if you didn't know already, absolutely it is. But then bring in an expert or somebody that has more insight and more understanding, that's closer to this topic than I am, and might have a cannier way around it. What I worked out from speaking to Chad was that he sees Scotland as a very small country, because it honestly is. But if you were to imagine it and scale it towards Texas or any state in the US or any province in Canada or even certain European countries, you would consider that, oh, okay, it's going to take me about an hour to make that drive. And it's really not like that at all. Just to travel the 12 or so miles from, let's say, just outside of Bamore in Islay, Bridgend or something like that, down to the south side of Islay to catch a tour, you're looking at 12 miles, so you're thinking, oh, that's 15 minutes drive. No, it's very narrow roads. It's very narrow roads. The specific example is a very straight road, but they're often very, very winding roads too. You need to build in much, much more time. It is a small country, but it still takes a lot of time. So I ended up having to make Chad realize that he can't visit McEwan and Ardbeg in the same day. It's just never, ever going to happen. But that's a good thing. Let's see if we can work out why. I'm going to reach out to Aeneas. If he's good, give me a thumbs up, Aeneas. I hope you're in good shape. He is. It looks like he's ready for us. Welcome in, Aeneas O'Hara.
Hi there. Evening. How are you?
I'm very well, Aeneas. It's amazing to welcome you behind the bar at the vPub. Let me explain. Let me introduce why I've reached out to you, okay? It's because Away from the Ordinary is like a big deal, and I want to talk about that in a minute. But that's not the reason I've reached out to you. It's because you're Aeneas O'Hara. It's because I know you through the London Whisky Club. It's because we've met, we've shared a dram together. And it's because I know your story, and it's a compelling story. So before we get on to all this Chad and Caitlin and everything that we've been talking about so far, Aeneas, you're in London, right?
I am.
And you're from, sorry, go ahead.
Ardnamurchan.
You're from the Ardnamurchan Peninsula.
Yeah.
So you're down in the city of London. Fantastic. It wasn't whiskey that took you down there, and it's your I guess your daily job is not fully focused on whiskey, but it comes into it a lot, right? Especially with the tastings and things. How did somebody working in the city end up being involved in an enterprise like Away from the Ordinary, and what is Away from the Ordinary?
Well, good questions. First of all, I want to say thanks for being here, and I've loved listening to Leanne's chat. And I've got so many things I just want to talk about what Leanne was saying. Reference.
We're here. Get comfortable. We're here for the night. No worries.
Yeah, I'll hold back. But it was lovely to hear Leanne's chat. So I guess if we go back, way back, I've traveled quite a lot. I've lived in different countries, and being from a small place like Ardnamurchan, and with my dad's family being from Campbelltown, and my dad being passionate about Lagavulin and Islay whiskies back in the 1980s and stuff, it was amazing for me to travel and go to these far-flung bars and then see a bottle of Lagavulin on this bar shelf in some on the other side of the world. And I'm like scratching my head and going, that's a little village, and you know, Talisker at Carbost and stuff. You've got these tiny little villages, and that bottle plonked in a fancy bar in Sydney or New York. And you can get it with wine, but it's not quite the same thing. And so that type of product and bringing back to a small place was a very proud thing for a Scottish person to travel around the world and see these things and reference back to it. And I guess, Alex Ferguson, who's, for those of you that don't follow football or soccer, very famous football manager, he said you become more Scottish when you leave Scotland.
When you live away, that's right.
Yeah, and that ties back to something you said earlier this evening about when you were living down south and so on. You appreciate Scotland more. So those are definitely things that are happening. But basically, I was working for a financial technology company. I lived in New York for 3 years. I lived in London, and all I was doing was, instead of talking about the software I was supposed to be selling or alleviate people's problems when it wasn't working, I was just talking about Scotland and whiskey. I was like, oh, you like golf? Go and play golf here. Oh, you like whiskey? Well, try this one. And so I was kind of wanting to be, or my hobby was kind of being a Scottish ambassador and telling people where to travel, little restaurants that are, up the single track road, little quiet glens, all these things. And at some stage I decided, you know what, I obviously like talking about this, I'm passionate about it. So I had a good job, I was very well treated, but I thought, I actually want to do something I'm passionate about, something that I really believe in, and I want to talk about something that puts a smile on my face. So that is Scotland and whiskey. Basically, I'm a very selfish person, and I just created my dream job.
Well, that's right. All it takes is an idea of what your dream job might be, and then they're willing to actually affect it, right? That's fantastic. So you created the company Away from the Ordinary, right?
Yeah, so we created hopefully none of my old bosses are watching, but I was at work, trying to find a URL that I liked and still employed, and I found Away from the Ordinary, and I just thought, I think it's it's great to be able to have that as a URL. I love the name, and it's also the ethos of the company, what we're trying to create. So you asked me what the company does, and basically the company is tailor-made travel to Scotland. So we think everybody's different, so every trip's different. So no two trips are the same. And there was something Leanne said, which really resonated with me, and it's something that we ask our clients. So Leanne said that her husband's a metal detectorist, and we do try and find those hobbies that people have at home, and then we can try and find a way for them to experience a Scottish element to that. So there's some that are obviously very easy, whiskey, golf, even like weaving and knitting. We've got strong traditions in that in Scotland. But we get
fishing. I imagine is quite easy as well.
Yeah. But like we have people that are their hobby and their passion is longbow archery. So then we have to find them a longbow. It's not what they're asking for, like it's not the premise of their trip to Scotland, but we like to kind of add in those kind of things, and then they meet
personal touch,
the same passion,
Fantastic. And that's Away from the Ordinary. Now I could just frame this by saying, before I jump into the lounge, I can see you're all shouting at me, just frame this by saying that Aeneas is not on here to sell Away from the Ordinary, because he's already busy beyond belief. But it was quite interesting what we talked about, Aeneas, because when I said, will you come on, I'm not going to ask you to share all your ins, outs, and secrets. And you said to me something that was really quite interesting in response to that. Where you talked about, well, Roy, I don't really mind, because I'll let you take it from there. It was compelling.
Maybe I'm a terrible business person though, Roy. But basically, so we're at the kind of, because we're so tailor-made and we spend a lot of time thinking about the trips, we either exchange emails or calls, and actually now, post or as we're creeping out of the pandemic, a lot of clients are quite comfortable having Zoom calls. So we have a Zoom call or a video call, and that's before, that's before any kind of money's exchanged hands at all. So it's like a consultation, right? So we have a consultation, we talk about the trip. So we spend an inordinate amount of time thinking about this trip and trying to get into people's heads and so on. And so basically, as everybody knows, at the start of the internet, it was great because there was a small amount of information on the internet, if you can remember that far back. Now there's so much information, right? If you're planning a holiday to anywhere in the world and you look, best hotel in London or something, like how many responses are you going to get? But all the information's out there. I obviously have certain connections to certain people that can open certain doors, and certain little bits of knowledge from having lived in Scotland and traveling back there every month when there's not a pandemic. I haven't broken any laws. The thing is that all the information is out there, all the guidebooks are out there. So there's almost two kinds of people that go traveling, and I do both types of travel, right? But there's the people that all the information's there and they will research it and they will look at our blog and glean bits of information from our blog. They'll glean bits of information from TripAdvisor, from Lonely Planet, from Condé Nast Traveler, and they will plan the trip and book it themselves. And then there are other types of people that all the information is readily available out there, but it will take a lot of time to research that. And they want somebody to do it for them and to have the add-ons and the little extra bits and bobs that we offer. So if I give you all my information, the people that are my clients are still going to book with me because they won't get the same trip exactly. But and that's fine. Sometimes I go on holiday, I'm short on time and I just want to relax. And I'll go to somebody in that country and say, sort me out, this is what I want. And then other times I'll be like, you know what, I've got a bit of time. I'm obviously a travel geek, so I actually enjoy researching these things. My wife's got a lot of complaints, but one of the biggest ones is that since I set up the travel company, I no longer have the time and energy to spend researching for weeks and weeks on our holiday away.
So that means that you don't research your own breaks and holidays.
Yes, exactly.
It's like the plumber with the leaky pipes and the painter and decorator with the peeling wallpaper, right? Exactly.
Yeah, 100%.
Glenn Duncan's having a laugh at me. You don't know how lucky you have it, Roy. He's saying, I get on a plane to Scotland and if it crashes, after 5.5 hours, I still haven't left Australia. It's that scale thing again. It's when people look at the scale, absolutely. Eric Waite, Whiskey Studies, good to have you in, Eric. Yeah, as I mentioned at the start of the stream, you'd have been a perfect guy to have on because of your experiences traveling over here as well. You've got lots of stuff to share, and Eric's managed to record a lot of that on his YouTube channel as well. And he's saying, I'm planning my haggis and Iron Brew themed trip to Scotland. Eric, I can imagine you're missing it like the rest of us, my friend. And I'm sure that you'll keep me up to speed when that's happening. Jimmy Jazz has bought me a dram as well and saying, I promised not to harass Aeneas too much. I lied. Every whiskey he tries tastes McMera to him, remembering the Black Rock. Cheers, slancha, until we are together again. So obviously, Jimmy Jazz through the London Whiskey Club, we've been in the same room together. Fantastic. Thank you for your dram, Jimmy. Thank you very, very much. So I don't know the McMera reference there, but I guess it's a wee private joke between the two of you, right?
Yeah, he's angry because we shared a mixed grill in London, and I think I took an extra lamb chop, so he's never forgiven me for that.
Fantastic. Alistair Dazin as well, saying, great to hear your feedback on our Isle of Raasay. Well, Alistair, it's wonderful to welcome you in. I'm aware that you're an occasional barfly, and it's wonderful to have you here as well. Actually, Leanne would like to say hello to you too. Leanne's in the background. She was part of your tasting over there at Isle of Whiskey Academy, and she was waxing lyrical about the tasting and the presentation that you did, Alistair. Alistair's been on the vPub as well. Absolutely fantastic guy, really impassioned guy. And you might recognise this wee dram that I've been enjoying still recently as well, this wee Grain of Truth, Alistair. It's one of his too. Really great to have you in here. So Whiskey Games is saying, Matt Bishop is saying, Aeneas hosted a cheese and whiskey virtual event recently, and he was a great host. You've been doing the cheese and whiskey thing too. Fantastic.
Yeah,
So,
I actually just hosted one tonight before coming on here. So
cheese and whiskey. So that's an interesting thing, because obviously you started this company, you're just getting ahead of steam going, you're getting a name for yourself, you're getting into Forbes magazine, Fortune magazine, you're getting all this publicity, and then bang, that must have taken the wind right out of you at the start of 2020, Aeneas. How did you adapt?
Well, I had a wee cry. No, it was I honestly thought, okay, well, we'll put the business on ice, and then we'll come back after the pandemic's over. At the same time I set up the business in 2017, I also started doing whiskey tastings, hosting whiskey tastings in a physical location. And if you remember what those are like.
Vaguely, yes.
Yeah, I think the last one I attended was the one we attended together with the London Whisky Club. And so then the pandemic starts, and I'm like, okay, I literally didn't know what I was going to do. I was cooking a lot. I was cooking so much, but I thought I can't spend a year making banana bread. So basically, I said I have this mailing list for the whiskey tastings, and I emailed everyone and said, look, if you want to meet up, normally when there's a crisis, we'd meet in the pub and we'd have a drink, and we'd put the world to rights, and we'd discuss things, right? And you have a common bond, and even if you can't solve all the problems, at least it's a shared moment. And I know you, Roy, adhere to this line of thinking that whiskey is a shared moment and a moment in time with friends. And so I emailed that list and said, look, if you want to join on this date, and I thought I was being really pessimistic because I put dates out until June 2020, and I thought that's overly pessimistic. We'll be out of this by June. But and I said, look, on these dates, buy these whiskies, join, pay for your whiskies, and then we'll raise some money for the NHS and for the charities linked to the NHS, and you can pay for my Zoom setup, and that's it. And then this was really resonating. It was making me feel better. Everybody on there was feeling better. We just discussed the whiskies. We'd share a moment of friendship, and then realized that actually this is something that's, I don't want to overstate it. I'm not going to say it's needed, but almost, it's something that people wanted. It's something that really resonated. So we started doing the tastings, virtual tastings, and people that had joined the ones from the mailing list said, well, normally at this time of the year, I'd entertain my clients. And so you host a tasting for my clients. And then we got some really good publicity. And then, Q4 last year was crazy, because normally it's a time when the clients people entertain their clients or their staff in the run up to the holidays and Christmas. So we were busy with that. So it was
nice pivot, nice adaptation.
It's great to have the two sides of the business. The whiskey tastings, which was, in all honesty, at the start, me hosting whiskey tastings was just an excuse for me to get away with buying lots of whiskey.
Yeah, I get it. Absolutely. We all had to step into a different scenario and do what we could to pitch in. And that's amazing that you did that, and you were able to adapt and kind of take a portion of the business that you'd already seeded and bring it online to keep you going and keep you going through. But let me tell you, before I go back to Chad and Caitlin here, is that you've gone through that scenario, you've done the online thing, you've done the virtual tastings. Now we're in this position here. I know you said June 2020 was pessimistic, but here we are in June 2021. But now we're in a situation where I'm talking to you not about virtual, but I'm talking about getting whetting our appetites for in real life events again. That idea that we can travel, get some dirt under our fingernails and really breathe the air of these different places. Is that starting to pick up ahead of steam? Am I doing this at the right time now, Aeneas? Because obviously most of the focus I'm going to be on is at the very earliest end of this year and probably out into next year. How are we for timing?
Yeah, perfect timing. We're getting more inquiries than ever in our whole history at this point in time. And I would say that if, it's still up in the air for this year, a little bit for international, I guess. But regardless of where you want to travel, if you want to travel into Scotland, if you want to go to Tokyo, if you want to go to Italy, I mean, I can tell you which is the best country to go to, and Royal back me up, but I'm going to be a good global citizen and say wherever you want to go, it's going to be fully booked next year. So if you want to travel next year, you need to start thinking about it now if you want the kind of best experience, because there's so much pent up demand. There's so many people. Basically, we've had something that those of us that are lucky enough to be able to travel internationally, we took that for granted to an extent, and that's been taken away from us for almost a year and a half. So there's that pent up demand. So one, we haven't had a vacation in the last 12 months, most of us. And so there's that pent up demand. But B, because it was something we took for granted that's been taken away from us, now we're like, well, who knows what's going to happen again in the future. So now I'm booking my bucket list for it. Now I'm booking that thing I've always said, well, I can go to Scotland in 2 weeks, or I can go to the Amalfi, next year for 2 weeks, or I can go to the Amalfi Coast, and we kind of put it off. Now people are going to nail it. People are going to go for it.
Absolutely.
If somebody stopped you from drinking whiskey for 14 months or 18 months, and you took it for granted, and it was taken away from you, what's the first bottle you're going to buy?
There's going to be a nice one as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think that's kind of what we're coming. Anthony Dunn's bought me a wee dram to say as well. Being a barfly 14 months, I'm a pandemic barfly. Anthony Dunn, my friend, you're not the only one. There's a lot of us in here. We've all kind of had that sense of being in it together. That's okay. And Anthony, I'm just very grateful to have you here, and thank you for your virtual dram. Cheers.
I'm sorry, in terms of saying thank you, I'm a very rude person. I just want to say thanks very much to the person that said they attended one of my whiskey and cheese tastings. So thanks for joining that.
That was Matt Bishop, Whisky Games UK. He makes whiskey games from whiskey barrels. He makes really cool dominoes from cut up whiskey barrels and things like that as well. Matt Bishop, great guy, East Coast. East Linton Whiskey Society, I think he's from. So let's take our inquiry here. This is quite a nebulous kind of out there inquiry, because but you've seen this as well. You've probably heard a very similar thing, because people do see the size of Scotland and they imagine it's quite a teeny place, and it's a small country, honestly. But they come to you and they say, where would you guide Chad and Sarah? What would be your first thing that you have to do to try and work out what they actually want, I guess, what their goals are, as Leanne said?
Cool. I didn't realize I was going to be put on the spot, but to plan a trip live and direct. Look, if you fly from New York to Los Angeles, you really start to understand how big a country the US is, the scale of it, and the enormity of it, and the fact that literally you have almost every sort of climate. If you include Alaska, you've got almost every kind of climate, every type of variation, from desert to lush forest and swamps down in Leanne's Louisiana. So it's very understandable to look at the map and think Scotland's a teeny wee, a totty country, and it is totty. But like you rightly pointed out, there's some logistical challenges for traveling around the country, which, in all honesty, add to its charm, as long as you're not stuck behind a caravan. Yeah. So I guess from that kind of point, then I would ask, like, do you have a favorite distillery? I mean, there's so many, and you touched on this with Leanne. Like, back in the day, it was very limited in terms of the distillery visits, or they were there, but you had to kind of hunt them down. You had to want to do them. Now, if you walk along Princes Street in Edinburgh, you got the Johnny Walker experience, and I think this is great to have this pride and passion, like the French have about their vineyards, or the Italians have about their vineyards. Now suddenly we're we've got whiskey, and it's not it's something to be proud of and something to be emblazoned as part of the experience of coming to Scotland.
Absolutely.
So I think I would ask, do you have a favourite distillery or a favourite type of whiskey? And then that would inform.
Right, I'll play the role of Chad, and I'll try, look, Chad, I'll apologise. I'll try and loosely go where Chad went, if I remember well.
Yeah.
He said, he loved his Macallan,
yeah.
but what had got his fiancée in was the Islay, and she was a particular fan of Ardbeg.
Cool.
So that threw a problem in right away.
Yeah. Well, for then you're kind of hoping they've got 10 days, right? I totally buy into your point of leaving time for serendipity. And we, some people have short amounts of time and lots they want to achieve. So we try and accommodate that. The client is king. But generally, we will try and encourage people to stay a little bit of time in the one place. Sometimes we stay somewhere for 2 nights, and we're just getting the hang of it, and then we realize what we want, what we really like about that area. So we try and make sure that clients, at least in a couple of places, have 3 nights or longer to kind of soak it up and soak up the atmosphere.
That kind of immersion, yeah.
The Macallan, look, the Macallan is a divisive distillery for some people, but I really like it because it's about Scottish pride, right? And it's about, we're in the middle of the Highlands, and there's this amazing architectural feat in the middle of the Highlands. And for me, I think it's a sense of pride that as Scottish people, who have a long history of engineering and amazing structures, that this amazing building is in the middle of a gorgeous village in the Highlands of Scotland. So I think it's fantastic to visit. What I kind of like to do is, if I get people to visit the Macallan, is then to go and visit something a lot smaller, to have a kind of contrast, right? It's almost like flavors, you contrast flavors to bring out the other one. You don't just want sweet, 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 and you don't just want salty, salty, salty. So it's to bring out that contrast. So, maybe you do the Macallan, and then you'd go to something like Ballindalach, or you'd go to a Knock, right? A Knock, it's actually what I'm drinking right now. A Knock distillery is a favourite of mine. So
my whiskey of the year you have there, Aeneas. Well done.
This is like, and the 24-year-olds behind me, and that's an absolute treat. So, so the contrast between going to a Knock or Knockdhu and going to the Macallan is fantastic, right? You're being stimulated by different senses at each place, and the experience is totally different, and then that informs your whole day, your whole experience to do those 2 or within 2 days or something.
Now, Knockdhu, am I right in saying they still don't have a visitor centre?
They don't. It's phenomenal. I love it. I liken it to going back to a distillery in the 1980s. It's perfect. I love it.
Knocking on the door, yeah.
I mean, we email. The knock on the door is the email. But,
perfect. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Just before everybody storms up to the gates at Knockdhu, or any distillery that doesn't have a visitor centre, you can't really do that. There was a time when visitor centres didn't exist that you could get away with that occasionally, but plan. Yep. Sorry, Aeneas, go ahead.
No. I need to be kept on track. So that would be something with the Macallan. Look, I'd say that if you like whiskey, then Speyside is the Disneyland of whiskies, because every mile there's another distillery. If Scotland's got over 130 active distilleries at the moment, over 55 of those are in Speyside. So you got, a huge proportion of Scottish distilleries that are in Speyside. So, and you contrast that with the far northwest of Scotland, where there aren't really any north of Ben Nevis. So Speyside is a mecca, just if you love whiskey. Obviously, it's a certain style, and that style is different to Islay. But there's fantastic tours. There's I just wanted to touch on something quickly, but I don't know what it is. But most of the most memorable tours and guides have, for me in Scotland, been women. So Rachel on Islay, Rachel McNeil, I travelled around Islay with her in 2017. as I was planning to start the business. Rachel is phenomenal.
Tour de force.
Yeah, cut from different cloth, like Leanne said. Broke the mold, I should say. Then you got Michelle in Dufton, who does this amazing walking tour, which I highly recommend.
And what distillery is that? Dufton Distillery?
No, all the distilleries in Dufton, even the close.
Fantastic.
We got 13 distilleries. She does different tours. But,
so who's that?
Michelle, I think it's Speyside Tours. I'll definitely send you the link.
Sure.
But absolutely phenomenal. And it's Jason Julier or Whiskey Rover that told me about Michelle. And Michelle, like Rachel, is straight as an arrow. And you can there's various tours that she does. But basically the premise is you go to each distillery, even the closed ones, and you walk towards them or past them, and you stop outside them, and you have a dram from that distillery outside it, and she tells you the history. But her family for generations have worked in whiskey in Dufton. And for those that don't know, Dufton is the whiskey capital of the world because it makes more single malt than anywhere else in Scotland. And there's one you can do with food, and that's the one I recommend, because you need something to sustain you across those 12 or 13 drams. And you get to Mortlach, the Beast of Dufton. You can't love a whiskey. His nickname is called the Beast of Dufton. And you get to Mortlach, and Michelle gets a little bit antsy there and a little bit grumpy. And she brings out the shortbread, right, which is made by her mum. And she brings out the shortbread and she says, some people say this is the best bit of the tour, is the shortbread. Her mum's shortbread is the best shortbread I've ever tasted. So there's some sort of rivalry with her mum that some people are like, yeah, the tour was great. Shortbread. It's obviously on these Facebook reviews, shortbread.
So she's like, for everybody that's here for the main event, okay, here it is now, finally. Yeah. Thank you for being patient. The shortbread. Amazing. Amazing. I want to do Michelle's tour now.
You should. Honestly, it's a game changer. It's so good, and it's just a history of Dufton and that kind of Scottish and Irish tradition of telling stories and that oral tradition of sharing knowledge by telling stories and so on. It's so good. It's really good. And I've gone on that and taken clients on that with me, and also booked it for clients to do themselves. And that's phenomenal. And then you got Justine in Edinburgh, who I'm
cask whiskey, yes.
Yeah, I'm working with at the moment for a client to do a private tour around Edinburgh. But Justine also does, tours that you can turn up on the Wednesday at X amount of time, and just these tours are phenomenal, and different tour guides that Knockdhu and Lefroy and Glengarry and stuff, just phenomenal. So yeah, some great female whiskey ambassadors in Scotland right now, from all age ranges as well. So it's,
and you've managed to give a real sweep there. Michelle in the Highlands, obviously Speyside. Justine's she's based in Edinburgh. I think she's in Leith actually.
Yeah, correct.
And then you've got Rachel out in the Hebrides on Isla there, all kind of bringing these really compelling things, because I happen to know and I've never personally been on any of their they're not tour guides, by the way. I should make that very clear. Justine does tastings and tours. Michelle sounds like she does tours. Rachel is very much about education. But I think that what they would be able to bring is what we're talking about, that immersion. Why does this thing exist? Why does it exist here? Why is it of this time and not this time, or whatever it may be? It's all the backstories and the insight and the really compelling anecdotes that then arms you with in order to share while you're having that same whiskey or whatever it may be with somebody else down the line. Amazing. I need to hook up with Justine in Edinburgh now as well. I've got a lot to do. See, the pent up thing is happening to me too. There's so much whiskey things to be done and not enough time. So you're obviously going to say to Chad and Caitlin, okay, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to split your holiday. You're not going to get Macallan. I recommend that you go take in Macallan, the Cathedral of Whiskey.
Yep.
equally just a big brand as well on Islay and Ardbeg, very corporate, very glossy. But and yet you go to Ardbeg, and it's really not like that at all. Ardbeg's in the best condition it's been in ever right now. It's gorgeous to go and see. But very, very recently, that place was really in need of a lot of TLC. It was really hanging together. Now it's lovely, but it's still absolutely traditional. It's still very much the old whitewashed buildings, sitting the way it was. Yes, they've made a better place for you to park your car, a better visitor centre, a nice cafe, all of these things. But there's a contrast right there as well, despite them being two very big brands. But they can't conceivably do that trip without splitting their vacation, right? They would have to make a clear transition between the two.
Yeah, and so, and you know, in all honesty, you know, I'm a very big-hearted person, so we actually plan trips for people that don't like whiskey as well. I just need to say that, you know.
Sure.
But
there's not many people who don't like whiskey watching tonight, though, Aeneas.
Okay, I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm just trying to explain the premise of the business. But yeah, I hope everyone on here likes whiskey, or else they might be slightly lost. But yeah, we'll like trying to bring in other stuff. So, you know, Culloden is an amazing place to visit. Leanne touched on that. And the museum there is very modern. It's like very modern. So that contextualizes a lot of things about Scottish migration, right? And whiskey's a story, right? Whiskey's a story. Is it a story about the blends? Is it a story about illegal distilling? Is it a story about boom and bust? So there's lots of stories about whiskey. There's lots of stories about people leaving Scotland, and Culloden's a huge part of that story about the migration of accelerated migration of Scottish people to Nova Scotia and North America. Yeah. But we would plan, so we would try and incorporate some other things. If they just want to do whiskey, that's totally fine. But we would try and incorporate some things. You know, if you're in Speyside, Culloden's not that far away. Leanne talked about a feeling at Culloden. I get that feeling very close by at Clava Cairns. These amazing 2,000-year-old cairns you can go and visit. There's no fee to go in.
And a cairn, just for anybody watching, just explain what that cairn is.
So there are these huge, a cairn is basically, in its simplest form, is a pile of rocks. Okay, I'm not really selling it, but it's a pile of rocks. But basically, they've been put in a structure, and sometimes in the Highlands, you'll see fairly simple ones, like 2 meters tall, and they're there to mark usually they might be there to mark a burial route. So if you were walking a long distance to bury someone for a variety of reasons, a clan chieftain might be buried in a certain spot, then there would be cairns for that. But these go way back in history. So the Clava cairns are older than Stonehenge. They're thousands of years old, and they're part of the inspiration for Outlander. And they're these huge structures, and there's 3 in a row in this field. Again, no visitor center, nothing. And the chambers are all open in a certain direction. And at the winter solstice, the sun and the winter solstice aligns with the 3 doorways. If I've got time in Inverness and I'm on my own, I'll just go and have a little wander there. It's like, and I'm not, you know, I don't have crystals in the house. I'm not that. If you got crystals in the house, good, no problem. But I don't. I've got whiskey in the house. But Clava Cairns just really calming.
But you do, and I feel, and when Leanne talked about Culloden, since we're sharing, I'll tell you where it happens to me, and it's at Glencoe. Yeah, and especially if you get the weather right. One time we stopped at Glencoe and it was windy and blowy, and we got out and we walked down into the glen, and we're kind of, there's a pathway walks through. Of obviously the West Highland Way passes up past Glencoe, and we were down inside the place, and down for whatever reason there was not a lick of wind. There was no wind whatsoever. It was just so perfectly eerily still. And yes, it's very easy for me to have that same bizarre, electrically, almost like a static electricity connected to the earth type feeling. Yeah, and I know that I'm going to lose subscribers, and they're all going to, what's this guy talking about? I'm here for whiskey. It's this nonsense. But you need to try. You need to do it. You need to see it yourself. Anthony Dunn has bought me a dram saying, joining the Patreon-verse, adding the additional whiskey night to feed my passion. Had some great whiskey nights that have really aided my knowledge. Anthony, thank you very, very much. It's always a pleasure to have you here, my friend, and it's always an option for you to support, but I'm very grateful that you did. I'll have the last wee sip of this lovely wee Raasay and raise a glass to Anthony Dunn. Thank you for joining. Cheers, Anthony.
So, sorry, go ahead, Roy.
No, I don't. You go ahead, you go ahead, Aeneas, go.
I was just going to say, it was funny that you introduced, you had a Raasay before introducing me, because I've got a wedding on Raasay in July. So my nephew's getting married on Raasay in July, and I'm staying in the distillery after the wedding. So I'll let you know how easy it is to get to the stills from the hotel room.
Magic. Well, I hope Alistair is in station. I hope he's there. I hope he's looking after you too. That would be amazing. I mean, it looks like just such a very, very cool, amazing space that they've got there. I flirted with the idea of having a barfly gathering there. It sounded amazing. And I sounded it out very softly with Alistair when he was on last year. So listen, there's things that can happen, and we might be able to work together on these things as well in the future. Absolutely superb. So if we talk about that then, so we've obviously got the distilleries nailed then. What's your favourite distillery? That's going to help you draw into a certain area, whether it's Speyside. And, you know, it's really difficult to drive around or through Speyside and not be like, literally every corner is another brown sign with another name of another distillery. It's relentless in Speyside. It's so but some of them, like Knockdhu, they're off the beaten track. You have to actually go and seek those kinds of distilleries. But then imagine in a place like Islay, it's almost like Islay is so very obvious. But are you tempted when people, maybe, let's imagine a pilgrimage to Islay, for example, Aeneas, are you tempted to say, well, it's wonderful, you've got 2 or 3 days on Islay, or maybe a bit longer. You're going to have time to see your favourite distilleries there. Are you tempted to encourage them to do other things to help frame the whiskey experience or enhance it in some way, or to kind of, I hate to use the words like soak in the culture or whatever it may be, but just to kind of work out why things are as they are?
Yeah, definitely. I think we've kind of got a network of guides that we use throughout Scotland, and those guides are have their own business, so they are very proud of what they do, and I'm very proud of my business. I'm very proud of what I do. So I work with people that, as much as I can, that are independent small business owners as well.
That makes sense.
I know that my clients, when they spend time with them, those people will be representing their business, and will be very proud of what they do. And I think some companies use the same driver for, and I don't mean in Scotland, I'm not like talking about other Scottish travel companies. There's lots of other great ones out there as well. But with other companies in other countries, sometimes you have the same driver that will take you around for the duration of your trip. But we try and use people that are local to that place, right? So people that grew up on Islay when you're on Islay, people that grew up in Speyside when you grew up in Speyside. And that gives you a connection, because they'll know the stories and they'll know the people, right? So when you're on Islay, and you know it yourself, Roy, driving in the Highlands, you get 2 cars passing on the single track road. One will go into the passing place, and then they'll stop for a chat because they know each other and their neighbours and whatever. But when your guide is from that area, they're having a chat and you're soaking up that culture. And then they'll say, oh, in that house back in New Year's Eve 1988 this happened, and then, oh well, look, the sun's shining, let's dip round and go to this cove or this beach. So it's about, as much as possible, it's about working with people from that local area, and building in time for the serendipity, and as much as possible trying to pair travelers, visitors to people, and then those people in that area connect the traveler to that place. And we all have stories from where we're from, right? Regardless where we're from in the world, we all know certain little anecdotes, little stories, what Jimmy did, right? And so whiskey is, we meet to drink whiskey, and maybe we're more guilty of this as we get older, but we meet to drink whiskey with friends, and then we tell stories about stuff that happened in the past, but hopefully we also create new stories. And so we're trying to create stories for people like Leanne, who's going to go back, and she's got stories and she wants to come back to Scotland again.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what's really nice about that, kind of having somebody that's local there, if you're going to leave an envelope open for serendipity to have a hand, when you mentioned the sun's out, there's this really nice little cove or whatever it may be, that's a perfect example. Or I was going to take you here to eat lunch today, but since it's sunny, I've got a really cool idea. And they're able to do that kind of thing as well. And that's an interesting thing. And of course, I guess that means that you're able to then layer that, because it's the same drivers time after time, and you start to tune into exactly what their value prospect, what their offering is. Yeah. And you're able to tailor it even more to the people. That's quite interesting as well, I think. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, if I'm dealing with a client and I can tell they're a little bit whatever their personality is, then I'll be like, oh, well, I'm gonna put you with.
I know who your driver is. Yes.
Yeah, this driver does, like, this, just because it's going to be it's going to be
a nice fit. Yeah.
So it's cool. And sorry, just to go way back to Culloden. Sorry, I go off on tangents, but
no, perfect.
One of the guides we use for Culloden, sometimes for people that really want to go down a couple of levels into the history, he used to manage the visitor centre, the old visitor centre, when it was just a little cottage. And he has some stories about things going bump in the night at Culloden. You're like,
which just all adds to the experience.
Yeah. His personal experiences of being like, oh my God, what's going on? So yeah.
Fantastic. Greg's Whiskey Guide from Greg from Paris is saying, 2 great guests, and I don't know how other barflies feel, but I'm drinking every word from them like precious nectar. So well done, Roy. Thanks, Greg. Thanks very much. Jimmy Like is saying, how many days could a man like me spend in Campbelltown before I'm forcibly removed? Jimmy's fully intending to overindulge when he's here. And Helswood is saying, aim to walk, stand up paddleboard, and soak in the local life on Isla as much as soaking in the water of life. Helen, I honestly recommend it as well, especially on an island that's just surrounded but with all of that wonderful coast as well. Graham Fraser is saying, now Graham, you would have been an amazing guy to have on, Graham. The knowledge that you have never ceases to amaze me. He shared a picture on the Aquavitae Barflies group in Facebook this week of the Porteous Mill from Malt Mill. Let's get the Malt Mill plate on it. Graham's, we need to arrange a time that we can just hang out and chat, Graham, because I imagine I'd very much enjoy hanging out and speaking to you. But he's saying, has Aeneas arranged visits to Campbelltown, surely Scotland's most under-visited whisky location and so much potential for new distillery growth?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Going there to visit my granny as a kid and hearing the stories. My granddad used to have a herring boat there, and judging by what I know of Campbelltown and the people from there, you'd have to do a hell of a lot to get thrown out. So don't worry about that aspect.
Campbelltown might just be Jimmy's idyllic or ideal spot. I think Jimmy's worked that out already, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Campbelltown's great. And actually on our blog, we have one of the things I really like doing in terms of whiskey travel is going to visit independent bottlers. So I love going to Gordon and MacPhail and Elgin. So normally I just plan trips, but once a year I plan my dream trip.
You for yourself. That's fine.
Yeah. So twice I've incorporated that into a trip, and we've gone to Gordon and MacPhail, and you go to their boardroom above the shop in Elgin, and you don't know what kind of you don't know what drams you're going to get. So if you go to a distillery, most of the time, there's some exceptions to this rule, but most of the time you're going to get the whiskies that they have, right? And you may get special editions, and that's magic. But if you go to an independent bottler, you walk into the room and you don't know what's going to be there. And for me, that's like, I get the tingles before I walk in the room. And so that's brilliant. But for me, for the pure kind of tasting whiskey experience, then Campbelltown, Cadenhead's warehouse tour, because you don't know what whiskies you're going to get. It's straight from the cask, and you're getting 6 or 7 different whiskies from 6 or 7 different distilleries, mostly from Scotland, but it might be the odd Irish or Paul John from India. And then you can buy what you want in the shop afterwards if you love the whiskey. So that for me is like that's
bucket list.
Yeah, from the whiskey perspective, and there's also a great danger. Somebody wrote about it recently. There's the great danger of the warehouse tasting, because whiskey never tastes better than in a warehouse. So you taste this whiskey in the warehouse and you think, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing I've ever tasted in my life. This is life-changing. And you take it back home, wherever home is, you open it up and you think, oh, it's nice.
I mean, it's still nice, but where are the angels? You know, why am I not shedding tears here? What's happened? Exactly. Absolutely, the best whiskey you can taste is whiskey in a warehouse. Or I liked the little anecdote that Leanne shared when she talked about having the beer barley or the Isla barley. It might have been, it was the Isla barley, of course. It would have been the beer barleys, and the actual farmers' farm in the barn or whatever. I can imagine that being something similar. Absolutely. And Glenn Duncan is suggesting that Graham Fraser is a must interview. There you go. And Simon Ray is saying, I always love mixing whiskey with literature and music. And Scotland has a wealth of all three, says Simon Ray. Absolutely. And Helen is saying, last time Andy was in Campbelltown, mid-80s, the local boats were unable to put out to sea, so the local lads didn't take kindly to the RAF boys flashing their cash in the bars. Lol. Yeah, weather affects things in strange ways, I guess, right, Helen? And Roland Whiskey Raiders, and good to have you, saying, have you or anyone of the Barflies ever visited Loch Hugh Distillery? Are there any official bottlings leaving that very remote place, just like the distillery's name? I'm curious about it. I think Loch Hugh is one of these, I don't even know that they're an official distillery as such. They have the tiniest little still, and I think they make a cask occasionally. I'm not even sure they make enough to fill casks. The answer is honestly, Roland, no. I don't know. Do you have any intelligence on Loch Hugh? Or?
No, unfortunately.
No. Yeah, and I think what we have to do, Greg's Whiskey said, conclusion, live in a warehouse. Well, that's a nice segue there, but not the way that you intended, Greg. The conclusion and living. We need to finish on something, and we need to finish on the big A. And yes, it's something that's always been acute, and it's become worse as the years have ticked on in Scotland. And I think that the situation that we've been through the last year and a half is only going to make it worse, for accommodation. Yeah. It's got to be the single biggest challenge that everyone's going to face. What's your philosophy with accommodation? What's your take on the accommodation in Scotland going forward? I'll share a small anecdote with you. Italian friends, I met with them when they arrived before a 2-week holiday in Scotland, and I met with them before they departed to go back home. So they arrived in the Central Belt, they did a big loop, and they left from the Central Belt. And I worked out that they had planned their accommodation in a big loop around the country. And I imagined that it would be 3 days, 3 days, 3 days, like this. But no, it was 1 day, then a big gap, then 1 day, then a gap, and then 1 day. And I said, you don't have accommodation? Oh, yeah, we'll just take a caravan or a bed and breakfast. And I'm saying, oh, wow, I hope you've got a sleeping bag and a big rental car. It's become a huge problem. And when they left, they did manage to find accommodation for every night. They were lucky, but they did end up in really run-down farmhouse B&Bs. They did end up in caravans and things. What would be your advice about accommodation?
Well, just like it's been reiterated from the start, is book in advance. You know, I have it's not just unique to, I don't know if there's a romance about, you know, we've been talking romantically about Scotland all night, and there is a romance associated to Scotland and Ireland and certain other countries as well. And so we have this notion of traveling, and that's building in too much serendipity. That wherever I feel good, wherever the sun's setting, I'll lay my head and it'll be fine. I've got crazy stories from a couple that were in Croatia and the kind of places they stayed, and I told them, don't book all your accommodation in advance. So rightly, you should book all your accommodation in advance. There are some amazing places to stay in Scotland, absolutely amazing. Again, owner occupied, right? These are people that, for whatever reason, maybe they've had a life in London or a life somewhere else, and they come back to Scotland, or people just starting out and they've got some extra bedrooms. And there's lots of amazing 3-4 bed properties on the west coast of Scotland, but you have to know about them. You have to know where to look for them. But on the west coast and on the islands, where possible, we usually book people into these small little inns that we know the owners are running it directly themselves. We know that the chef's amazing, etc. And that's where we'll book people in. But my sister used to run her own amazing bed and breakfast on the Isle of Skye. She had Josh Hartnett stay once, right? The American actor.
Yes.
And she said to me before he arrived, she said, "Oh, Josh Hartnett's going to stay, but I don't like his films. His films aren't that good." Blah blah blah. Anyway, Josh Hartnett stays and he leaves, and chatting to my sister next week, and she says, "Oh my God, he's gorgeous." And Josh Hartnett's the nicest guy in the world. He bought my brother-in-law a bottle of Talisker after visiting the distillery and stuff, because they bonded over Land Rovers. So, but that's a weird aside. Right. But basically, there are these amazing places that are owner occupied. But my sister running this B&B, they would have people knocking on the door at 10 p.m. at night in August with kids in the back of the car crying, and they'd have to say, "No, you need to go back to the mainland for any chance of getting accommodation." So if you take one lesson from this evening about traveling to Scotland, book your accommodation in advance. And the foods come on. Scotland 20 years ago didn't have the best food reputation, but the food in Scotland is amazing, and pizzeria is a great shout. And you can get pizza with scallops on it and so on at Pizzeria in Bowmore. But yeah, book your accommodation. There's amazing accommodation out there. Don't leave it to chance. And the food's amazing. But again, so our clients think we are control freaks, because we book their trip for them if they're traveling in July and August, and we book the restaurants for them depending what kind of food they like, and we mix it up. One night Michelin star, next night pub, next night pizzeria, and they're like, "Why are you booking us into a pub on a Tuesday night?" And then they email afterwards and they say, "Oh my God, they were turning people away at the door." Thank you so much. And the other thing, sorry, one last point on accommodation and restaurants and having things planned, right? You leave time for serendipity, but if you book your accommodation in advance, you're not wasting time during your vacation or holiday looking for accommodation. You've done the looking ahead, and now you're just there to relax and enjoy your time, rather than every morning spending half an hour or an hour trying to find somewhere to stay.
Absolutely, absolutely, great point. And I remember there was a time where I used to take trips when I was very, very young, early 20s, late teens, and we would just go to a place and we would just literally walk past the bed and breakfast looking for a vacancy sign to hang up. But this was before the days of the internet.
Yeah.
That doesn't really happen anymore. People are much more organized than you. You need to that even if you don't arrange all the trips and all the distractions and diversions, book the accommodation and the rest of that will follow, right?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
I know you're very, very busy right now, Aeneas, and I know that, but tell us where people would find you. How would they get a hold of you for any kind of future advice, tips, or interest in what you do, where would it be?
Yeah, so it's just awayfromtheordinary.com. And I'm sure you will Google outoftheordinary.com. And that's fine, but you won't find me. But awayfromtheordinary.com. Also, my name is, there's not too many. There was more Aeneas's in the 18th century. Most of them died out, but Aeneas O'Hara, you can find me pretty easily as well. If you get the vowels in the right order, it should be okay.
I think in the chat, I managed to put it in. It's quite a whiskey-themed name. If you look at the famous, I'm thinking, is it Aeneas MacDonald, wasn't it? That wrote the whiskey distilleries of the United Kingdom, or no?
It's just whiskey.
No, Alfred. It was whiskey. Yeah, Alfred Barnard wrote the whiskey distilleries of the United Kingdom. Aeneas MacDonald wrote whiskey. That's it. Now, that's a fascinating book to read.
Yeah. It's really good. It's kind of as relevant, it's about 100 years old, I guess, right? And it's as relevant today as it was then. What's interesting is that's not his real name.
That's exactly right. He's a pseudonym, yeah.
Because
it's
not
something to do with temperance or something.
Yeah, his mom is a part of the temperance movement and hated alcohol, so he had to give himself a false name. And then you got Aeneas Coffee from the coffee stills as well.
Exactly, of course. So people should be very familiar with Aeneas. Jimmy Jazz is saying an awesome book. Absolutely. It's worth reading just for the language and just the way it's written, to be honest. Yeah. Graham Fraser is saying affordable accommodation on Islay is becoming difficult to book if you're a single traveller. I can imagine, and even the tip used to be go out a season, try and avoid Fashil and things like that. But accommodation on Islay, because there is a boom on Islay, a lot of the accommodation is soaked up by the tradesmen and the builders and things that are on the island. And you're not just competing with other tourists, so that has to be the takeaway from tonight. Sandy McDonald, thank you. So Sandy says, I'm off to Islay and Campbelltown on the 21st of this month for the first time. Great chat. Sandy, you're a lucky man. I hope you're going to have a great time, and I hope you're going to find enough things open for you to have a really nice experience. I'm absolutely sure you will. Sandy, thanks for your drama, friend. Cheers to you. Wonderful stuff. And Ian Bose is saying, if you do end up sleeping in the car in summer, don't leave the windows open. Otherwise, the midges will have eaten you to the bone by the morning. Absolutely. That's got to be the biggest tip you can share. When is peak midgie, Aeneas?
Yeah, I would say if you have the flexibility to travel whenever you want, kind of travel trade term is the shoulder season. So, the autumn or the spring, best time. July and August are great. There's lots of things going on, like Highland Games, etc. But it's busier. Roads are busier. Accommodation is busier. And then we have our friend, the Midge, who will stay close with you for most of your trip. But yeah, May, generally very easily, end of April to beginning of June for the West Coast. And I really like September and October on the East Coast, or on the NC 500. It's just the weather is changing, but the light at that time of year is absolutely amazing, and you will see more rainbows than you've ever seen in your life, probably. But yeah.
Just because of the changeability of weather, and I think everybody knows now in Scotland, when you come here, you don't go for the big heavy Arctic parka. Go for a t-shirt and then a light fleece and then a waterproof thin layer on top. Go for layers, because you're going to use all of them in the same day, so you'll need a wee backpack as well for those layers to be stored, and also for your wee tub of midgie spray to keep you protected. And Thomas Elmer is saying, does 100% DEET work on the midges? Thomas, I was going to suggest that, there's lots of products out there that seem to be relatively effective. Some work for some people, others not so much. 100% DEET, I think, is maybe an American brand. I'm not familiar with it. But if it's a general insect repellent type spray, you should be okay, right? Generally, right?
Yeah, there's a few Scottish ones, or ones that are in Scotland. So you have a smidge or midgie. Yeah, it's a midgie one. But then there's the famous one, which has got the best story around it, was the Avon ladies. So these are door-to-door salespeople, and the Avon ladies would sell this skin softening moisturizer, and apparently whatever chemicals were in it to give it the smell, they would repel the midges. And so the special forces and the British Armed Forces, when they were training in Scotland, they would all be wearing this Avon
Skin So Soft. It was called, and it was the reason I got to hear about Skin So Soft is back in the days when I was golfing, and it was a favourite among the golfers as well. They would be out there with their Avon Skin So Soft to keep the midges away. And Helen is saying that she swears by smidge. Fantastic. And Whiskey Radar, Roland is absolutely right. Wind helps against midges. Yeah. And generally, if you're out and about, you're going to find midges are going to be near where there's ever standing still water, like a lake or a pond or a pool or something like that, or something that's not draining particularly well. And if there is even a light breeze, it's enough to keep the midges away. But when it's completely still, that's when you really have trouble from them. Aeneas, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I've dropped your link in for anybody but I'm going to put it in the description box below so that people can get a hold of you and reach out to you if they think that you might be able to help them. Fantastic. Are you able to hang out with us a wee bit longer?
It'll be my absolute pleasure.
Excellent. Fantastic stuff. I'm going to bring Leanne in for a wee game of Is It a Speyside and play it together. Are you up for that? You know what that game is, don't you?
I don't, but just go ahead. I'll join in. And
okay. Well, I tell you what we'll do then is if you find yourself a core range bottle, as long as you know who makes it, as long as you know the geographical location of it, those kind of things and how it's presented, don't show me what it is. You and I can play a wee game too, and we'll bring Leanne in at the same time. Leanne, if you're good to come back in, aye, she is. Of course, she's good. Leanne's always good to come back in. How are you, Leanne? Oh, you're muted. I think you're muted.
There we go. Okay, I'm great. I've been making notes and thinking of all kinds of things I need to talk to Aeneas about.
Fantastic. And you've got lots of, there's going to be lots of people that you already know, your mutual friends, let's say. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of happens in the future, because when everything does open up again, something will happen to replace that. We had an event planned for us all to travel together to Germany at the start of 2020. It was snowballing and becoming the biggest barfly gathering and event ever, and then suddenly, that was all kind of cancelled and kicked down the road. So that pent up demand is going to affect things around the channel as well. It's going to be pretty exciting when we all finally get together. I can feel it. So I tell you what, Aeneas, you can spectate just to refresh yourself to what this actually is. Yep. I think Leanne, the last time she was on to play Is It a Speyside, I was the target. I had the bottle and she was guessing. So we're going to flip. Oh, there she is. And she won her coin as well. Well done to you. So what we're playing for everybody that doesn't know, just before we play the quiz at the end, is this little sniper coin. You can't buy these. You have to play the game live or win it in the lounge. So if you guess first, if you guess before me or after me, it doesn't matter. You're also in with a chance of getting yourself one of these wee coins. I'm handicapping myself, Leanne, of course. People have chopped me down, cut my legs off a wee bit. I'm down to 9 questions now. And I'm going to just ask you to tell me, is it a Speyside?
No. Not a Speyside. No.
It's not a Speyside.
No.
Is it a Highland, Leanne?
Yes.
Okay. Is it a mainland Highland as opposed to an island, I mean?
Yes.
Ooh. If Dalwhinnie is the central point in the map, you're going to be looking at Google Maps now, right? Is it south of Dalwhinnie?
No.
Okay. Is it north of Dalwhinnie?
Yes.
Is it owned by one of the big four, Diageo, Pernod Ricard, Edrington, or Grants?
No.
Oh, okay. North of Dalwhinnie. I'm going to start to assume that it's not an Eastern Highland now. I'm going to assume that we're up at potentially Old Pulteney, Balblair, could be Glenmorangie, could be Tomatin. Does it have an age statement?
Yes.
Is it 46% or above?
No.
Okay, I'm in a wee bit of trouble now.
You can give yourself that one you took away.
No. Is it a Tomatin?
No.
Okay, so we're looking for a non-age statement.
No. It's an age statement. Yeah.
It is an age statement. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. But it's less than so it's less than 46%.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But it does have an age statement.
Yes.
Okay, I think I'm beaten tonight. I'm on the ropes. I'm just going to guess. Is it Glenmorangie 10?
No.
Oh, that's the first time I've been beaten in a long time. What do we have, Leanne? What is it?
It's your Maritime Malt, Old Pulteney 12.
Oh, Old Pulteney 12.
Yes.
It did flash through my mind. I was thinking about it.
We're so close.
I was so close. My goodness. Well done, Leanne. That's the first time I've been on the ropes recently and guessed it on the last one. But that one, I was away. How did that happen? Aeneas, you get the idea, right? You can only answer yes or no. Do you have a core range single malt that's widely available everywhere? It's in the glass. Fantastic. Okay, I wonder who got it in the chat. Did any? I'm sure Old Pulteney 12 by Bruno Martin said it. Yash Desai said Old Pulteney 12 as well. Lots of people. Look, almost everybody was ahead of me. Everwind even. Whiskey Radar, Everwind. Andrew Pierce. Oh my goodness, I'll be scrolling up. People were at Old Pulteney. Dear. Beaten tonight. Okay, Aeneas. I'll try the same strategy, but slightly modified. Is it a Speyside?
No.
Is it a Highland?
Yes.
Oh, oops. Is it owned by one of the big four, Diageo, Pernod Ricard, Edrington, or Grants?
No.
Okay.
I'll just save you a bit of time and say it's not an Old Pulteney 12. Okay?
Thank you very much for the help. That's really a helpful hint and tip. Is it I'm thinking of Aeneas O'Hara, right? Is it a Western Highland?
No.
Is it a Southern Highland, Aeneas?
No.
Is it Northern Highland?
Oh, you're testing my geography. No.
Okay. Is it a Glen?
Yes.
Does it have an age statement?
Yes.
So I'm thinking Glendronach, Glenglassaugh, Glengarry, Glencadam. There's a lot to choose from. Is it a Glengarry, Aeneas?
No.
I can't just guess the distillery. I have to try and guess the expression. Is it a Glendronach 15?
Almost.
It's a Glendronach 12, isn't it?
No, come on. It's a Glendronach 21. I was.
21, the Parliament.
Yeah.
The Parliament.
So I think the bottle was behind my head as well, but yeah.
Absolutely. Beaten twice tonight. That's okay. I'm not bitter. Wonder if anybody got a Glendronach 21 ahead of me. I would think I would be surprised. Oh no, Bruno Martin said, well, that was Glencadam 21. He said Glencadam. Glendronach 15, lots of people on the Glendronachs. Hopefully there'll be a moderator or somebody that, if not, I can pick it up on the replay and work out who managed to get a hold of it first in order to win themselves a sniper coin. But well done, everybody that did a lot better than I did for those two. It's harder to guess, though. It's much, much harder to guess, in case that isn't obvious. Listen, there is a wee quiz at the end tonight as well. How late are we? 5 past midnight? That's okay, Aeneas, isn't it?
Yep.
And Leanne, that's only 6:05 in the evening for you, right?
I'm just getting started.
You've got a tasting tonight, haven't you?
I've got a party to go to tonight.
Fantastic, superb. Wonderful. Let's pull up the quiz at the end. Bring it back in again. I thought that this was quite easy tonight, but I sent it across to the doc, and he declared that some hard and some very easy. So I think there are going to be a few banana skins, but good luck, everybody. It's always multiple choice, as it always is. The pass mark is 5 out of 10, so I'm sure that we'll have a couple of pass marks here behind the bar at the vPub. But that's everybody in the lounge. That's all you're trying to get to is 5. Good luck, everyone. Question 1. Talisker has recently rebranded due to a realignment and focus on what? Brand new livery come out from Talisker. Why? A, to recall its Sky heritage. B, focus on sustainability. Or C, a focus on new international markets. This is Talisker 10 we're talking about. The only new livery I've seen is the Talisker 10. Anthony Dunn's bought me a wee dram. Thank you so much. Sure, Friday at work is easy. ZZZ quiz time. Thank you so much, Anthony. Thanks for the dram. Cheers, my friend. Maybe a slightly tricky one to start, actually, unless you've seen some of the... Is it recalling its Sky heritage A? Is it a focus on sustainability B? Or is it a focus on new international markets? Aeneas, what do you think the new Talisker livery is all about?
Judging by the adverts I've seen, they're talking about, being made by the sea. So I'm going to go with A, it's Sky's heritage.
And Leanne?
A, me too.
Aye, and the label is definitely a wee cut-out map of the island and everything, but no, the focus on the new Talisker livery was fully to reduce the weight of the bottle, to cut down on plastics, and to focus on sustainability. So there you go. They reckon that they'll be able to save... they've cut down to 86% of the plastic is gone. I don't remember there being a lot of plastic involved. They've moved away from a plastic cork, certainly. They've got a natural cork and a wooden top on there, thinner glass, all of those things. So that's what's behind the rebranding, they say. Listen, I won't make fun of it. I think it's a good move, but I just have to say that distilleries like Ardnamurchan and McEwan and other distilleries out there were already showing the big boys exactly what could be done with a bit of focus. There's a lot of work still to be done. Here we are. Here you can see that label that probably made you think about that made by the sea heritage thing. You can see that they've got the wee map here and everything. Still very but look at that. Even from a distance, it still looks a lot like the original classic malts Talisker from 1988. Diageo are very good at not changing things, I have to say. Question 2. At 80 years, the release of the oldest known single malt was announced this week. From where? Now you're looking for a distillery to pop up. Was it from Gordon and MacPhail? Was it from Caden Heads? Or was it from Signatory Vintage? Who? Now we can't see a bottle of this yet. It's still in the cask, but they think they're going to get about 125 decanters, I think, out of this. But 80 years it's been in the cask. From A, Gordon and MacPhail, B, Caden Heads, or C, Signatory Vintage. You look comfortable, Leanne?
It's been all over my Instagram feed.
Of course. What would you think it is?
Me?
Yes.
A, Gordon MacPhail.
Absolutely. Gordon and MacPhail, on top of their very, very mature Mortlax that they've had out, it's 70, 75 years old. They've now got an 80-year-old Glenlivet. I don't have any details on the price, but I consider it largely irrelevant for myself, and I think the majority of the folk that have tuned in. But there you go, an 80-year-old malt whiskey. Quite incredible. Wow. Question 3. St. George's in Norfolk have been producing whiskey since when? This is the oldest and longest established English distillery, St. George's in Norfolk. But when did they start producing? A, 1996, B, 2002, or C, 2006? There's now, I think at the latest count, we are now approaching or just beyond 30 English distilleries. The English Whisky Show, by the way, a wee plug for those guys. It's coming up on the 3rd of September, the 4th of September. They've just released tickets. You can buy tickets for the English Whisky Show and get involved now, englishwhiskyshow.com. That's an independent run thing. It's fully collaborative. Everybody collaborates to bring that show together. Quite amazing. Also, the Belfast Whisky Week in its second virtual year. An amazing festival, very, very collaborative. Don't get fooled by Belfast Whisky Week that it's all about Irish whiskey. It's very much not the case. Very, very inclusive festival. Excellent, excellent tastings as well. 23rd of July to the 31st of July, if you're interested, belfastwhiskeyweek.com and all over social media as well. Aeneas, what do you think? What year English Georges in Norfolk?
Well, going with it, in Scotland, I think there were only 2 distilleries built in the 1990s, with Arran being one of them. I'll go 2002.
And Leanne?
Total guess, 2006. C.
Leanne nicks it. Quite amazing to consider that scene, almost 30 distilleries, is only 15 years old. If you ever needed any more reassurance that we're in whiskey boom time, that's a stat to hammer at home. Question 4. The long-closed malt mill distillery on Islay was closed in 1962 and is now what? What is malt mill on Islay? Is it demolished, accommodation, or is it a visitor centre? Malt mill on Islay, closed in 1962, is now A, demolished, B, accommodation, or C, a visitor centre. Now, this was an amazing thing. It was opened in 1908 by the restless Peter Mackey. And the idea was that they were trying to replicate Laphroaig. They didn't manage to do that, but they managed to make something rather nice, I hear. I've never actually tried it, I don't think. I might have tried it in a White Horse blend once upon a time. But it's become a legendary thing. It's become the holy grail, let's say, of whiskey. Is there any malt mill actually out there as a malt? But is it demolished? Is it accommodation? Or is it a visitor centre? Aeneas.
Oh, if I get every question wrong, does that mean I'm barred from the vPub? Like,
absolutely not. It endears you to every barfly. every barfly in the lounge, it endears you to them.
It's next to Lagavulin, right? Yep. So it's could it be their visit? No, their visitor centre's in the distillery. I'm gonna go demolished.
Leanne?
I'm going to go with the visitor center. C.
It is.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Now, it's not, you can't really say that Malt Mill was closed and it became a visitor centre. It's actually integrated into Lagavulin. And yes, you're absolutely spot on. The visitor centre is part of Lagavulin. But I think when you stand there, if you walk up that wee narrow passageway, you're actually standing in the area that once housed the stills for Malt Mill. Absolutely, a visitor centre C is now what Malt Mill Distillery is. Question 5 is a picture of a distillery, quite an attractive thing, a mix of the traditional and the modern here in one scene, a very distinctive roof off to the left there, quite a nice space to the right, but of course I'm just going to ask you what I'm looking at. Are we looking at Isle of Raasay, Isle of Harris, or Lindores Abbey? A, Isle of Raasay, B, Isle of Harris, or C, Lindores Abbey? I think you are both very confident about this. In the lounge, they're taking it and running as well. Everwind is very quietly just putting in a guess. But to look at the A's that are coming up in the lounge, there's not a single deviation that I can spot here. We are indeed looking at Isle of Raasay. Very attractive, I think.
I cannot wait to visit.
Yeah, me too. I'd like to go and see that whole thing and just experience it as we've discussed this very evening. Question 6, which of these Calmac ferries serves, I've tried to keep the theme a wee bit about what we're talking about tonight. Which of these Calmac ferries serves the Kennacraig to Port Ellen and Port Askeig route? A, MV Finlaggan, B, MV Caledonian Isles, or C, MV Lord of the Isles? Which of these Calmac ferries serves the Kennacraig to Port Ellen and Port Askaig route? This has appeared in my videos at least 3 times. It's very, very famous. It's a very well appointed ferry too. It's lush to ride it. You've been on it, haven't you, Leanne?
I have.
Yes. It does a nice hot meal as you take your time. I have to say, I know that you can fly into Islay. It's fun to do it. I've done it a couple of times flying in. It's great fun. But there's nothing like getting on board. Leanne, tell us which one?
The Finlagan.
Absolutely.
My cousin works the bar of the Finlagan.
Oh,
cool.
You're a very good guy to know in whiskey, Aeneas. I'm picking this up this evening. I have to say that
coming from Louisiana and going onto a ferry, which is not like our ferries that go across the Mississippi River, and there's a bar and a gift shop and a restaurant. I'm like, I'm good. I'm just going to hang out here for a couple hours.
It's a very comfortable way to get to Islay. I absolutely love it. I do. Caledonian Isles, I think, is Arran, and Lord of the Isles, I think, is Mallaig. They are all legitimate Calmac ferries. But Finlagan is what I was looking for. Great fun. It's one of the best prices to buy a dram. I think you pay less than £5 for a dram on Finlagan for whatever malt that they're selling. Sugar Kitty is somebody. She's not scoring so well tonight. Why am I thinking that that's a she? Never mind. Hook us up with some drams on the ferry. It's easy to do that, Sugar Kitty. They're not expensive at all. Much cheaper actually than when you get to Islay. Question 7. Oh, there's a wee picture of Finlagan herself. Question 7. The construction of Bonington Distillery in Edinburgh was delayed by a year. Due to what? What delayed the construction of Bonington? This is interesting because it could have gotten ahead of Holyrood to be the first distillery in Edinburgh for over 100 years, I think. But it was delayed due to either A, waterbirds, B, archaeological discoveries, or C, uncertainty over style. Andrew Pierce is saying the problem is they only sell Auchentoshan American oak. Andrew, no. You can easily get a Lagavulin. You can easily buy a wee Lefroy. You can buy Bruichladdich. You can buy a huge selection of whiskies to whet your appetite for the destination. Do you know this, Aeneas?
I don't know.
Bananas, can I think?
I'll go just because of... it could be Leaf, Waterbirds. It could be Edinburgh history, archaeological discoveries. I'm going to go Waterbirds.
Oh, Leanne?
I'm going with archaeological discoveries.
Oh, my goodness.
I have no idea.
It is absolutely true. When they were getting the ground ready for the foundations, they discovered not only Bonington Mansion under there, but an 18th century distillery.
Wow.
I know, quite incredible. So they had to put everything on hold and obviously make the arrangements that they had to make in order to preserve the treasures that were under the ground there. It's quite a big deal, quite a delay to Bonington Distillery in Edinburgh. More can be read on that story online. Question 8. Now, if you're a barfly, if you remember the Barfly Facebook page, you might be helped a wee bit on this one. A 2022 opening of a new distillery from Dark Sky Spirits has been announced, and it's currently being built. Where? So this is not like a vaporware distillery. This is actively started being built. But it's fairly new in terms of announcement, and the company behind it is called Dark Sky Spirits. But where am I talking about? Am I talking about A, the Scottish Lowlands? Am I talking about B, Southwest Ireland? Am I talking about C, the Peak District in England? People keep talking to me about, are you starting to tire of all the new distilleries? I think tire is the wrong word. But the surprise or the kind of frisson of excitement that used to come when you heard about a new distillery is not quite the same anymore. There was one Loch Lee, literally a stealth distillery down in Ayrshire just recently came along, and you're hearing about these new distilleries wherever they are, all over the world, all the time. And it's just another marker of the boom in whiskey right now. But it is difficult for even us impassioned enthusiasts to keep up. It's so difficult. Any guesses here, Leanne?
It is a total guess. And I'm going with the Scottish lowlands because I'm thinking they're not terribly populated, so they may have a dark sky, maybe.
Your reasoning is incredibly unhinged and out there, but you're absolutely right on the money. This is in Moffat. This is the Moffat distillery down in the Borders, and it is the Scottish lowlands. And again, there was a time that there was two, but at one point there was only one operating distillery in the lowlands, Auchentoshan and Glenkinchie. We had grain distilleries, of course, down in the lowlands, but now there's a plethora. We've got Daffmill and Kingsbarns and we've got Annandale, and we've got a multitude of others, Glasgow, Clydeside, so many. So even the lowlands are booming right now. So did you get that one right, Aeneas?
Well, I'm going to say yes. But
good man, absolutely.
Just because they have the Dumfries and Galloway, they have the Dark Skies park that you can do stargazing. Just on the Loch Lee, it could be quite interesting because they actually own the farm, so you'll be able to see where the barley is grown before it's distilled. So they'll do everything apart from the malting, but it could be a cool one. I
was reading that, but they're preparing for a malt whiskey release this year.
Yeah, August. August. Yeah, I think. Yeah, good people there.
Amazing. Fantastic. Question 9. Oh, sorry, I put in a few pictures of this Moffat distillery by Dark Sky. Here it is now. It's looking a wee bit like Wolfburn, but I ask you to look at the man there, the man on the right-hand side for scale. And then you can see here's an artist's impression. You still house there with the glass gable on the left. And here's a kind of open thing. And what's interesting there on the outside, you can see wooden worm tubs on the outside. So another interesting one for the future, I think. Question 9, 2 difficult questions, honestly, I think, to end with. Which of these whiskies do not use the Lincoln County process? The Lincoln County process is that process that's specific to Tennessee whiskies, where it's filtered through a charcoal layer or bed, or it's steeped in charcoal. I'm going to ask which of these distilleries do not use that. A, George Dickel Tennessee whiskey. B, Benjamin Pritchard's Tennessee whiskey. Or C, Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey. I think I finished with 2 tricky ones tonight. Let's see how the scores in the lounge are doing. Oh, no, the scores are doing very well tonight. Very healthy scores. 7 out of 8 for Molasses. Good to see you in Molasses. Wonderful to have you here. Molasses Mike, isn't it, Mike? Tom Scaramuzza 7, Sugar Kitty on 7, Graham Fraser on 8 out of 8. He's shocked at himself. And Ian Bowes is saying he blew it on 7 out of 8. Still an amazing score. Whiskey Radar 7 out of 8 as well. Gino Camo, good to see you in, Gino, 7 out of 8. Matt Brown 7 out of 8. Ross Fudd 7 out of 8. Wonderful stuff. Great scores. What would you suggest? Should I put the pressure on our American who doesn't really drink a lot of bourbon? What's your tasting you're going to tonight?
It's our Bourbon Society of Baton Rouge. We are kicking off. This is our launch party for the Louisiana Bourbon Festival in October, and all my bourbon people are going to be like killing me over this. And
it depends. You've not got it wrong yet.
But my grandmother, my dad's mom, was a big fan of Jack Daniel's and Dickel. I'm going to go with Benjamin Pritchard's Tennessee whiskey, that is different.
Now, Leanne's been on a bit of a purple patch. She's been on fire tonight, Aeneas. Do you know this? Are you going to follow her lead?
Did I know this? I don't know anything. If we've done anything tonight, I know nothing. I am...
if you've learned one thing,
if you've learned one thing, Aeneas, I should follow Leanne.
Yeah.
over the trenches. Okay, great.
Absolutely. And the thing is that I'd say that tongue in cheek, but generally, most of the questions, most of the time, are intended that even if they're asshat questions, difficult questions, that they have the ability to at least pique curiosity, if not learn something from. But there you go, Benjamin Pritchard's Tennessee whiskey. I've got a picture here. It is Tennessee whiskey. It is alongside all the other Tennessee whiskies like Uncle Nearest or the other ones, Dickel, wasn't it? George Dickel, Jack Daniels. But through a grandfather agreement, when they were bringing in this Lincoln County process legislation for Tennessee whiskey, they were allowed to continue in the traditional method that did not use the charcoal Lincoln County process, but they can still label themselves Tennessee whiskey. I found that very interesting.
Well, Roy, I come by this very honestly because my grandfather and his father, my great-grandfather, ran an illicit still in the hills of West Tennessee. But it wasn't, I guarantee you it didn't taste like that.
Probably. But you have whiskey literally running through your veins then.
Yeah.
Illegal whiskey too, the coolest kind. Ian Bowes is on 9 out of 10. He's going for a full house. Ian, I'll be keeping my eye. So is Graham Fraser crossing his fingers on 9 out of 9. Fantastic. Absolutely amazing for Graham and Ian there. Let's go into the inevitable asshat question for question 10. Who was awarded an MBE in the Queen's Birthday Honours List announced this week? Aeneas is feeling confident. He's got a flutter of excitement that he knows this. And that's going to be the same feeling for so many people in the lounge, but this is the asshat question. Is it A, Charlie MacLean and Lulu, B, Charlie MacLean and Petula Clark, or is it C, Charlie MacLean and Rick Astley?
Oh my God.
Roy, really?
Well, can we just take a moment to celebrate the wonder that Charlie MacLean is, and the fact that he's been honoured in the Queen's Birthday Honours List. I am very, very chuffed for the man. I hope he's chuffed too. That's really, really cool. To his ambassadorship to Scotch whisky in Scotland, I think it's fitting for the theme tonight, Charlie MacLean as well. Wonderful stuff. People guessing, people all over the place. Greg's Whiskey Guide saying, "Oh no." I'm going to be keeping an eye on Ian Bowes, and I'm going to be keeping an eye on. I'm sorry, who's Lulu?
Lulu?
He's a Scottish icon.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
have
you heard the song "Shout"? The '60s song.
Yeah.
You make me want to shout.
Yeah.
That's Lulu.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. All right, I'm just gonna guess.
Good for you. I have to tell you that despite everybody thinking it might be Rick Astley, it was indeed Lulu. Now, I'm not suggesting that they got a birthday honours together, the two of them, kind of collaboration, but at the same, they were mentioned in the same list. I think Lulu got an OBE potentially, and Charlie picked up an MBE. I'm not entirely sure. But here's a wee picture of our favourite whiskey ambassador, the man himself. One of the best vPubs ever was at the start of last year, just before, on the very, very cusp, or the shoulder, as we've learned from Aeneas tonight, of lockdown, when Charlie joined us. That was quite an amazing thing. Congratulations, Charlie MacLean, on your OBE, my friend. Cheers to you. So where does that leave us? I think we've got some decent scores here, Leanne, I think.
Yeah. 8 out of 10. I matched my best, so I'm happy. But 4 of those were pure luck. And
you got an 8 out of 10 last time you were on the vPub as well, right? Fantastic. Well done. This is the place for you. Steve Kiss is saying 9 out of 10. He's saying, "Oh, please." And Helen's would just say, "No, 9 out of 10." It was probably the asshat that slipped, that forced her to make a slip up at the end. Gregor Dykeman is on 9 out of 10 as well. I'm looking for Ian and I'm looking for Graham just to see how they got on. Maybe they're not talking to me anymore. Ian Bowes, 9 out of 10. I'm so sorry, Ian. Was it the very, very last one, of course? And Graham Fraser. Did Graham manage a 10 out of 10? I can't see. I think he's doing a wee either he's doing a lap of his living room or he's doing a run around his living room and kicking the furniture and cursing my name. No, Graham Fraser, he's there. He got 9 out of 10 as well. Oh, Graham, I'm so sorry. I do find it easy to make enemies, I think. Listen, see with my last dram, I'm going to say thank you both so very, very much for coming along and hanging out with us tonight and sharing your passion, sharing your insight, sharing your stories and your advice as well. Leanne, I can't wait till the next time. And you know that thing that we're not very sure if it's going to be like, are we just going to keep doing fist bumps? Is it going to be, handshake's going to be okay? No, it's going to be a big hug and a sloppy kiss.
I've had my shots. I'm hugging you. If I get anywhere close, get any zip code close to you, I'm giving you a hug.
Absolutely. And let's hope it can maybe be Austin. But I think the perfect scenario would be for you to manage that trip to Scotland as well. Leanne, it's always wonderful to welcome you behind the bar. Please stay if you can for the roll of the credits, and I'll say goodnight to you. Leanne, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All the best to Mark. Cheers to you.
Thank you. You too, Lynn. Nice to meet you, Aeneas.
Nice to meet you too, Leanne. Hope to meet you in person someday.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. And Aeneas, thank you so much for bringing the insight. Thank you for being so open to sharing anything, any questions at all. And stepping forward as well. Quite amazing that you've been able to keep the ball in the air despite everything. The timing could have been, you could consider it really probably the worst timing, but you've managed to keep things going and things are looking bright on the horizon for you. I'm very, very sure. It's been a pleasure to hang out with you tonight. And I think I'm going to look forward to the next time that we can get together, whether it's in a exclusive high-end tasting like the last time we were together, or whether it's just the two of us having a wee dram in Glasgow, whatever it may be. Thank you for coming along and spending time behind the VPAR tonight, Aeneas. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation. Honoured. And cheers to everyone. Slàinte.
Slàinte. Hang around if you can, Aeneas. Thank you. Wonderful stuff. Listen, I hope everybody was able to get a wee bit of value out of tonight if you're watching this on the replay. I mean, I'm a bit late in saying that now, but of course I'm going to stay up tonight and try and do a few timestamps underneath in order for you to make it a wee bit easier to navigate in the replay like I always do. I've managed to do in 2021 this year. There's only about 3 vPubs left for 2021 before the summer breakup, that is. Next week I've got Stefan K. We're going to be looking at old versus new. So I've got contemporary readily available whiskies that everybody recognises from everywhere, what we're able to buy now. And I've also got older versions of their whiskies too. And we're going to just have some samples to compare and talk about how whiskies has changed over time, because the inevitability will be that it's changed. Whether it's better or worse isn't really the point. It's just to talk about the context of that constantly changing landscape and what it means to these core range expressions, the accessible, widely available whiskies that we recognise. Stefan K, the wonderfully enlightening and insightful Stefan K, will be joining me for that. I'm going to send the samples across to Stefan so that we can drink it together and discuss the context of changing whiskey. I hope you're up for joining me then. Thank you to everybody that stayed here to this time. Jerry Miller's bought me a dram to say, been up to Scotland on my UK trips 4 times, but all were for football. And before I started my Scotch journey, next year's trip will be different. Don't discount the football, Jerry, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting for you to see Scotland through the lens of whiskey, and it'll be interesting to see how you got on with that. Rossford is saying, brilliant crew tonight. Thank you, Leanne, and thank you, Aeneas. Thank you so much, Thomas. Wonderful to have you in. Thanks, Scotch in the Bayou, says Molasses. Helen's Wood is saying, insightful VPub tonight. Great guests as always. See you next time. Hugs and drams one day, hopefully soon. I hope so too, Helen. That would be amazing. Greg's Whiskey Gary's saying, that was great again. Thanks, Roy. Thanks, Aeneas and Leanne. Thank you so very, very much. Lots of thanks pouring in from Gregor Dykeman. Saying thanks to you and the brilliant guests. Roy's becoming the new Menno. Maybe I've been listening to Menno too much with the tricky quizzes. Maybe I need to pull it back again a wee bit. And Alan Newland is in saying, well done, Roy, wonderful guests. Alan, that looks like a new name. Be wonderful to welcome you in again, my friend. Thanks. It's been great to have you here. Gino Kimo is saying, thanks for a wonderful evening and great week. You too, Gino. I hope you're doing very well, and I hope everything goes well with the house move. Jeff Whiskey is saying, Aquaviti, this has been brilliant and has made me very excited for my 30th trip in a couple of years. 30 years old, Jeff, you lucky man. Graham Fraser saying, thanks, Roy. I'm just back from Oban Distillery today and I related to tonight's VPub. You are the whiskey journeyman, Graham. I think it would be amazing, as I said earlier, for us to hang out and chat. And Greg's Whiskey Guide is saying, interesting, Aquaviti. I did that on my channel too, 2x2, sometimes 5 times the same age statement. Looking forward to it. Fantastic, Greg. Tom Scaramouche is saying, fantastic stuff. Looking forward to catching you next week. Just Jones is saying, thank you, Roy, for another great vPub. Amazing episode and nice evening. Thank you, Just Jones. And Chris is saying, night all, successful night. Sniper coin number 2, Sniper King, I'm coming for you, says Chris. We've not seen the Sniper King in participating recently, so his throne is at risk. I think he's safe for a long time to come yet, but well done to you, Chris. Listen, everybody, thank you all so much for hanging out with me tonight. I've had a great night with a couple of great guests. And I'm looking forward very much to hanging out with you with another great guest, Stefan K, next week. And until then, I'll raise this wee glass and tell you all that thank you very, very much. Oh, and Alan Newland has just joined the Barflies. Thank you very much for your support, Alan, with my very last sip of this very tasty Diluin. I don't even know who it's from. If you send me a sample, put your name on the bottle, please. But it's a That Boutique Whiskey Company Diluin, an absolutely fantastic distillery, and this has been a tasty dram too. But let me raise this glass and say you're all very, very dearly loved, and I look forward to welcoming you all next week again. Until then, Slanchivara. Good night, whiskey folk.